across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome to the show. Alex Phillips here with you, sitting in for the inimitable Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, who is doing stuff in the West Country while I am not doing stuff in the West Country. It's almost some sort of cultural exchange. The man who never leaves the M25 has gone to see what the real people are up to in Britain. So I hope you're having a wonderful time there, Kev, and the missus and the dog. But I'm going to be with you through till 10 o'clock, ranting and raving, rampaging through the day's news. There's a lot to talk about. It's not going to be particularly opinion light, let's put it that way. Here sounds the emergency klaxon for a whole load of sharp-tongued, sharp-edged thoughts coming your way, and I hope some of them also come my way too from you, because it's a two-way street on this channel. It's a very democratic setup here where every single voice counts, and we want to hear yours. So if you want to contribute at any point, whatever you think on the stuff we're talking about, or even if it's not something we are talking about and frankly you think that we should be, you can throw in your 2-bit on that as well, as long as Faith decides that you're okay. And believe you me, you don't want to mess with Faith. 03444991000 is the number to call. She'll be ready to vet you, and when you are deemed suitable, you will be patched through to the studio when we are in the call-taking section. You can also use that number to ping me a WhatsApp message. Those just appear here on my screen, so I can read them out during the course of the programme. You can also leave me a voice note on that number as well, 03444991000. Now, if you're feeling a little bit more old-fashioned, you remember the days of playing Snake on your Nokia 2210, and you'd rather stick to a good old-fashioned smuzz, you can also send me a text. 87222 is the number for that. Remember to write the word TALK, T-A-L-K, before you send me your thoughts in that format. That way, it reaches this particular studio in here and doesn't ping-pong around talk towers like an out-of-control volleyball. OK, I'm pleased to say that I'm joined for the next hour by the brilliant Philip Kisserly, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, who was telling me earlier that actually, because I said, Phil, mate, how do I actually say your name? Because I see an S and a Z together, and I think this has been designed to trip me up. This is going to be like a Z sound or a sound. You know, it's going to be something that's not in my sort of normal parlance. And you said, actually, that bit's not the problematic bit. Just get rid of the whole last bit.
It is. It's a Hungarian surname, and you can only really pronounce it properly if you've got a really deep Hungarian voice. And the correct pronunciation is Kisé, which is a bit odd in Bury and Manchester, where I'm from. So I just say Kisserly. Kisé. That's it. You've got it. Perfect.
I've got a deep Hungarian voice.
You're a macho Hungarian.
Yes.
Fantastic.
One day I'll be competing in the shot put and winning all the golds. Right, now let us talk about, well, trouble I think is in store for Yvette Cooper, because it's sort of like damned if you do, damned if you don't on this one. The court ruling against Epping Forest Hotel, the Bell Hotel, saying that actually it should be shut down, the migrants should be moved on. If she doesn't challenge it, it sets a case precedent, which is going to essentially create a blueprint, I'd imagine, for similar cases up and down the country. And then they're going to end up in one hell of a difficulty, because they're going to have tens and hundreds, thousands of men, and really nowhere to put them, because what they're not going to do is stick them on a Hercules and ping them back from whence they came. But if she challenges this, if she actually says, the rights of these men who have broken into the country outstrip, outweigh and trump the rights of the locals, I mean, that is not good optics, to say the least.
Well, it's just one of those things that we're in this situation, and it's insane that we're in this situation. We should never have been there in the first place. This is, you know, this is year upon year, decade upon decade of open borders, mass immigration, total stupidity, putting our own people at risk. We don't know who these men are. They, you know, they have this habit of tearing up their documents in the middle of the English Channel, and here we are now. Yes, if you're absolutely right, Alex. If she says, right, okay, let's you know, if they are put out into the community, God knows what's going to happen. Okay, that is catastrophic.
But actually, that's almost their resort, isn't it? By sticking these men into houses of multiple occupancy, I find that harrowing as a woman. I am no fan of the migrant hotels, but the idea that you might have 6 of them to a house. I mean, I've just bought my first home. It turns out the property next to mine is for sale. If it turned out that the local authority bought that, and then I went home tomorrow and found 6 Somalis camped up next door, that would essentially just destroy my life.
All right, well,
it'd be awful.
In a way, that's kind of what's happened to me, right? I moved a year ago. I live in this lovely Georgian square. 2 roads across the road, there is a house that is full of asylum seekers. Now, nobody knew. Okay, all of a sudden, one day, they appeared there. So there are so many issues around this. I mean, there's obviously safety for women and girls. It changes the shape of the environment, the community. It changes because people all of a sudden become wary. Okay, because there are strangers here. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they've come from. Okay, so there is this situation then that the government not only are acting on a dreadful policy that's been there for years and years and years, and it isn't their policy, but it is their ethos. They are open borders. They are international socialists. It's down to them. And now they are putting the rights of men from barbaric cultures, from Middle Eastern cultures, from places like Mogadishu, who think of women and not only as second-class citizens but as objects. They are putting the wants and needs of those men first. They are giving them money, they're giving them mobile phones, they're giving them cards with money on them.
If they're in a hotel, and I'm totally against them being in hotels, but at least you have a sense. I mean, I think, frankly, if they're going to be in those hotels, they should be locked inside those hotels. They should be treated like detention centres. But at least there's a sense that you see the sort of exits and egresses. You see the passage of people going in and out. Far harder, one imagines, to, you know, kidnap people and bring them back home, or, you know, bring in hauls of drugs. I mean, yeah, it's one thing about the delivery scooters. But when they're put in these private residences, there's also the argument, isn't there, that people say, oh, well, these people have come from war-torn countries. Well, great. They're probably pretty traumatised. They have seen the sharp end of a machete. You know, you don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what their psychological disposition is. They're hardly sitting there singing Kumbaya and knitting kitten embroidery, are they?
Well, no. I mean, yeah, they are often psychologically damaged, but most of them are actually coming from France, aren't they? Well, they're all coming from France. They are not coming from a war-torn country. They're coming from France. Now, you might not want to live in France, you know, so you come over here. So there are so many negative aspects to this story. But really, like, look, my father came to Britain in 1959. He was a political refugee. He spent 3 years in a refugee camp, okay? It was fine. He was perfectly okay. He spent 3 years in a refugee camp in Rome. Post-war, here, people pretty much lived in prefabs and refugee camp type situation because there was no housing. It was the post-war population.
On my school estate, I went to a crumbling Victorian high school, and we had to have a load of prefab classrooms when the other ones were leaking or burning.
Yeah, why can we not take these men away from vulnerable women and children and put them in refugee camps ready for deportation?
What I don't understand is this. You know, you rightly mentioned France, where they live in bin bag bivouacs in those sand dunes. They live in makeshift accommodation. If you look at Greece, they're lucky if they get a foam mat on the floor in a big concrete hangar. The other day, I went to one of those massive storage units. They have a huge sort of labyrinthine subterranean bowel to them, those storage units. And they're sort of all electrified and well air conditioned, well lit, you know, quite big containers that are all secured. And I thought to myself, if these storage units are everywhere all around the country, they're popping up like nobody's business. Why can't we just convert one of those?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think these storage units actually even have, some people actually do live in them, don't they? And turn them into sort of recording studios and stuff. A lot of them have toilet facilities. But also, you know, during COVID, do you remember all the hoo-ha about creating Nightingale hospitals. Oh, how quickly they could build something with a load of camp beds to treat people who might be shuffling off the end of their mortal coil. You know, actual British people facing, you know, terminal disease, or that's what they thought they were preparing themselves for. But when it comes to this lot, no, you can't give them a camp bed in makeshift accommodation that is secured. No. They have to have cleaned rooms and buffet breakfasts and entertainment, so they're all made to feel so happy. I don't understand how Britain ended up, in my mind, being totally alone in this approach in all of Europe. Are there other European countries doing this? Are there other European countries going, come here, we'll put you in a hotel?
No.
Because I think if there were, all these people wouldn't be crossing the channel. They'd be going there.
No, I mean, Germany wasn't it, because of post-war guilt, and then it stopped because of all the atrocities and all of the rapes and all of the assaults, and you know about this because you've made a film. You made a film for the New Culture Forum about all of this.
Yeah.
I think there are two things here, right? One, I think this is a national emergency. Okay, we are getting a couple of weeks ago we had nearly 1,000 coming over in one day. 1,000 young men coming over in boats in one day. Okay, so what we need to do, I mean, this is so simple. We need to remove the incentive.
Yeah.
Okay. Get rid of the incentive. I know I sound like Nigel Farage here, but he's absolutely right. He is 100% right.
The French have been saying this for so long. You know, when we bang on about we're giving the French all this money and they're not... The French are like, but hold on, right? You want us to do a job for you. Why are you there like a big flashing welcome here? You get all this stuff. Why are you the El Dorado to these criminals? We're not. You know, you need to stop doing that. And the French have a point. We might, under international law, be obligated to make sure these people don't die at sea. Although I find myself, if you're going to take your life into your own hands, whether it's skydiving, playing on railway lines,
from France,
or getting in a dinghy over the channel, that's your agency.
Yeah, that's your
we may have an international obligation to make sure that they're not just rough sleeping. And actually, it would be a terrible situation. It would not help things if they were rough sleeping, because they'd be out on the rob and it'd be, you know, dirty and it'd be awful. I don't want to see those sort of huge sort of tent encampments that you get in America and Ireland. But our only obligation, surely, is as far as the Greek go, which is a foam mat on the floor and somewhere to go to the loo. You know, it isn't saying to the people of wherever it may be, whichever leafy suburb, your local hotel where your nan used to stay for Christmas, or where you went to celebrate Sheila's 50th birthday, is now going to have 400 of these random characters. You're going to be paying for it. And what's more, they're going to be given all these perks and privileges in the local area that you can't afford for your own family.
Exactly. But it's this thing, it's this chattering class, upper middle class thing which says we are responsible for every waif and stray in the world, and we are not. And we put ourselves, it's some kind of bizarre self-torturous etiquette, isn't it? We put ourselves second, and our children, especially if you know, I'm very familiar with places like Manchester, Bury, Bolton, Rotherham, all of those places in the north where I'm from. You know, we put our children and women second there. You know, their safety just goes out of the window because we have this elite kind of obsession with race, with the other, with putting the kind of noble savage, that's not me talking, that's them talking, on a pedestal and thinking how terrible we are, and we have this terrible guilt for some reason, and it's about empire for some reason. What guilt? Was the most benign empire in the world, okay? Compare it to the Ottoman Empire, we're responsible for slavery. No, we're not. The whole world operated... We're responsible for abolishing it.
And it's still happening today, largely in the countries where these people are coming from.
Yeah, and so, but I suppose the point I'm making is that this guilt that these people feel, and it's an indulgence as well, it's about virtue, it's a toxic combination of guilt and narcissistic virtue. We really must dump all of that stuff, say absolutely no. Our culture is not predicated on guilt. We've got nothing to be guilty about. The reason places like Hungary, Poland, all of those places, they just have no truck with it because their culture is predicated on tragedy. They have tragic history. histories, and they don't want to repeat it.
But
so
also, a lot of these
people
who stand there reviewing and regarding all of these men coming over on small boats as equals and deserving of the same privileges, and who should be accorded the same sort of empathy, they've not been to the countries these people are from.
Absolutely not. No.
And if some of these people, women especially, were to spend just one afternoon walking the streets of Syria, walking the streets of Afghanistan, walking the streets of Mogadishu, they might suddenly have a big wake-up call at quite what they're letting into the country. But equally, this idea, a lot of these men, if they really are the world's poorest, which they are not, if they can afford to pay people traffickers vast sums of money, they're the middle classes in these countries. But, you know, a substantiable number of these men will have come from places where there's no electricity or running water and makeshift accommodation. That's what they're used to. And as someone who has lived in Africa a lot, right, so I've travelled around quite a fair amount of Africa. I've lived in Ghana, I've lived in Kenya. In Kenya, you go to Nairobi, you've got glittering towers, sushi restaurants, champagne bars and all the rest of it. Great capital city. But you go down to the Masai Mara and they're seeing who can jump the highest and making, you know, makeshift shelters out of cow dung and wearing a lion's neck on their bonds. You know, even in Kenya, you've got this huge diversity of expectation. And if you were to take a Masai warrior from the Mara and dump him in a glittering tower in Nairobi, he'd be like, I don't know what to do, I don't belong here, I want to go home and, you know, carry on being a nomadic tribesman.
Absolutely, right. And there are other things that come into this. Just while you were talking about that, okay, we are bringing in people into probably one of the most sophisticated societies ever. Okay,
exactly.
From honour-based tribal societies, and these men. As I say, they don't view women as second-class citizens, they view them as objects covered up. And when they see women with blonde hair who aren't covered up, frankly, they go berserk, you know, because it is completely new to them.
It is exotic.
That is a danger. That is a young male who is excited like that is a danger.
And you try and explain, as you said, to these people the sophistication of, say, how British people know how to queue. There's so much, like you said,
really
innate etiquette in Britain that, you know, even if you go over to France, you think, well, you're rude, or, you know, Spain, or Italy, you know, even when you go to our Western neighbours, Brits often look at them and think, you know, you shouldn't do things like that. You know, we have, like you said, a sort of a codified subliminal system of living as a society in Britain that you can't just absorb. You know, you have to have been brought up with it. And particularly, like you said, those sexual mores. One thing I've noticed when it comes to, because, you know, I was having this debate with someone the other day and they're saying, well, but white men, you know, can sexually harass and abuse him. Of course they can. But there's a big difference, right, between men in a van who sort of wolf whistle or shout something out a window, which doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me because that van is here and then it's gone. They're not physically in my presence, they're not about to park up, they're not going to follow me down the street. They know, I know, we all know, everyone observing it knows this is harmless fun because it's just existed since time immemorial and you just know that. That's the unwritten understanding. These men from other cultures, they don't take no for an answer. They pursue. They get in your face. They're persistent. That's what it is, especially. It is the persistence and it's the physical proximity. They will come really close to you. You're beautiful. I want to be your friend. Give me your number. Where are you going? I want your... You know, mad things. I want your babies. Can you imagine a white guy going out to the pub being like, I want your babies. Like, no.
These are, well, we never used to have this kind of thing. These are alien cultural practices, as, you know, as is throwing acid in someone's face, as is running around with a machete. Those are completely alien to British culture. And yet you walk out there near London Bridge and, my God, you know, you might see that. So that's one thing. There's another thing here, isn't there? And we're talking about women and children especially, but there's also Jews as well, right? And so if you walk out on any town on a Saturday in particular, when there are all of these hate marches there, in the Middle East, this anti-Semitism is baked into that culture in an incredible way, and we are bringing it over here. What are there, about 200,000 Jews in this country? Yeah, something like that. Jewish women, I absolutely know, Jewish women feel terrified on the streets because they are just fair game. They are hated. And it's the elites in the institutions, the Corbynistas, the Guardianistas, or, you know, all of those people, they facilitate this, you know, the Your Party people, the pro-Palestine people, they absolutely facilitate the anti-Semitism, and it's shocking. So we've got all of these things happening in this very fractured culture. Let's not even mention trans and gender politics, and these people are coming into it. How the hell are they going to understand it?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's a madness. It's a social experiment that is doomed to fail. Yeah, is failing. Has gone wrong. Right, listen, we're going to take a short break now, but Philip and I are going to be back with some statistics on how many of us think the country is in a bad state.
Moving 200 people to Rwanda wasn't going to stop people getting on boats.
It was going to be a significant impact in terms of people knowing that they would be refused entry on a permanent basis to the UK. We spend a lot of money on it. Julia, I served on the committee. I was in Parliament. I know the
250 people.
It was
250 people being sent to Rwanda was not going to deter 28,000 people arriving.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Now, we teased before the break that there are some statistics out. There's been a survey done of the great British public on what people think about the state of the nation. Guess how many Brits say that the UK is in a bad state?
It's a lot.
It's 8 in 10. I want to know who the 2 in 10 are. Who are these 20% who go, nah, it's all great? That's brilliant.
I think it's 84 out of 100. So bearing in mind that Keir Starmer has only been in office, for about 15 months, something like that? It's catastrophic. It's extraordinarily bad. I can't think of another government that has been so utterly car crash, clown car crash, terrible in my lifetime, and I'm 54 years old. It's extraordinary. I cannot for the life of me see how they're going to last to 2029. Can you? I can't see how he's going to last to the end of the week, and it's Thursday.
I know, right? No, it's true. I mean, the latest rumour is that they're going to have to go cap in hand to the IMF, as France is also potentially going to have to do. It is quite extraordinary. So this was a survey done by YouGive. So fully 82% of Britons consider the UK to be in a bad state. 36% who see it as being in a very bad state. 14% think it's all right. Just 1% say it's more than all right. I mean... Who are those people?
They're the ones wearing the lovely jackets with their arms
they're the ones
tied up the back.
They're the ones living in the Bell Hotel in Epping Forest, getting the free yoga lessons and the all-you-can-eat buffet breakfasts, no doubt. But I mean, it's utterly, it's shocking. And you know, the other day, this morning actually, my other half was showing me this table of crime statistics, the safest counties around the UK, and there's a league table, and he was bragging that Wiltshire is at the bottom because that's where he lives. He's like, there you go, you know, Wiltshire, no one's there. If we could just take out sort of Swindon, you know, wouldn't even make the table at all. And then when you looked through the table of it's done by Police Force of the most crimes per capita, you could, I fancy, very easily transpose a heat map over a similar map which breaks down demography. And what you would find very easily is those areas with the highest levels of immigration are the most crime-ridden.
Yes. Well, and now we know because we're getting some kind of sense of nationality, aren't we, with the stats now? This is this whole big thing, isn't it? We know who are committing the crimes and the particular kinds of crimes that they're committing. Look, I was in Manchester a couple of months ago, and I was walking through the city, and I grew up there. You know, it's a place I don't even recognise.
Manchester
anymore.
Worse than London, apparently, according to said table.
Okay, so I was walking through. It was full of Asian lads with masks on and black tracksuits hanging around, looking intimidating. There was a woman squatting in a doorway and defecating. Right, this is in the city centre.
Come on.
There was a couple arguing in a foreign language, and they looked as though they were about to hit each other, and they had a baby in a pram, all of that kind of stuff. And I walked through, and I just thought that it never used to be like this because we had some kind of social cohesion, right?
Yeah.
You can't bring 1 million people into the country every single year and expect everything to be okay.
I didn't realise they've had to put signs up on Bournemouth Beach saying, please don't curl one out on the sand. I mean, you know, so I lived in Ghana. I also happened to live in Manchester once upon a time. Near on the border, I lived in Bernage.
Yeah, Bernage. Yeah, Oasis territory,
but it was actually just on the sort of the far end border near to Longsight, and Longsight was a pretty fresh place.
It's a pretty tough area.
But I used to go to Longsight and really enjoy going to all the exotic food markets because I lived in Ghana and India and so on and so forth, and like cooking some pretty out there cuisine. But when I lived in Ghana, for instance, you know, you'd go. There's beautiful beaches in Ghana, and certainly the beaches in Accra, Labadi Beach is, you know, party time, lots of people trying to rob you and grope you, but it's a clean beach and it's got, you know, little eateries and so on and so forth. You go further west and the beaches get more and more beautiful because they're more untouched, but they're used by the locals as the toilet. You know, a lot of people live in these villages and they go down to crouch on the sand to relieve themselves.
That's all they've ever known.
And that is because they don't have a flushing loo. Yeah. And so you bring people here and watch it, you know, they're going to be on the sitting on the beach. I mean, it's...
The thing is, you look at these stats and you say, well, first of all, you say, who the hell are the 2% who think it's okay? But for me, it's the city centres. And it isn't just Manchester. Manchester is obvious, London is obvious, but it's any kind of small city centre. Some of the smaller ones are worse. Some of those northern, you know, Batley, Dewsbury, Huddersfield, those places are just so lost. They're so poverty-stricken. They are so blighted by multiculturalism. Now, the thing is, there's a sense of menace, there's a sense of violence about just walking in the streets now. And again, that never used to be there. And again, that comes with mass immigration, that comes with incompatible cultures, that comes with young men hanging around. There's a sense of the civility has gone.
I tell you one thing that I noticed the other day, because I've just moved back to Gloucestershire. Very, very high trust neighbourhood. I mean, it's sort of in the sticks. Most of my neighbours say moo. And it's just lovely. I already know basically everybody from the whole village. And everyone sees me and goes, all right, new girl. And it's wonderful. And, you know, I just find myself, walk to town, I do this, I'm on the phone, it's... just coming back to London, I got off the tube last night, and I'm staying at the moment in a really nice part of London, not in Earl's Court where I used to stay, which once upon a time, just 4 years ago, was half all right and is now some sort of gauntlet of doom. But I was actually staying in a nice, affluent, safe, very sort of Middle England part of London. But I still found myself getting off the tube and immediately that knot is in my stomach. I feel that pinch. My breath's gone shallow. I haven't got earphones in. My phone's in the handbag. I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm monitoring who's around. Where will I go? Should I take a cut through over this park? You know, sitting on the tube, you know, when I finish the show late at night and you're sitting there, you're looking at everyone on the tube carriage.
Exactly.
Is one of them going to go tonto in a minute? Is there a weirdo on here? Is there... I mean, Samara, my producer, and I took the tube together last night at Westminster Station. Because we were going in the same direction, and we saw, you know, basically a ne'er-do-well, a sort of slightly crazed-looking man from a far-flung climate, sort of, you know, ranting and raving, rambling about on the tube, and you just think, well, let's not get on that train. And I had forgotten, you know, I've only been in Gloucestershire for 3 weeks, but I'd forgotten what that
feels
knot
like
in the pit of my stomach felt like until I came back. And even if nothing happens to you, living with that jeopardy.
You're changed, you're different, aren't you? And we shouldn't have to do that. I mean, this has got, well, you see the stats, it's got so much worse over the last 5 years, but it's been getting worse really since 1997. Now there's things are changing though, right? Because we've got these statistics here, so we can have this conversation and say, look, well, everybody else feels the same. And that is a shift actually, because if we were having this conversation 2-3 years ago, all the right-on elite types would be phoning up and saying, you are racist, you are racist. What? For being a woman who doesn't want to be frightened in the city at night, for being someone who doesn't want to be attacked in the street, for actually harking back to something that was better because one, it was safer, two, people could communicate with each other, and there wasn't this sense of, and this is the thing for me, Alex, right? I look at people and I think, are you unhinged? Are you mad?
Are you going to
do something?
Yeah. The other day, again, leafy neighbourhood in London. I took a photograph because there was a guy standing in a churchyard. They're surrounded by police. There were about 3 cop cars, and then it ended up being just 1 cop car, but 4 police standing around trying to manage this guy who was effing and blinding and shouting, making a big scene, all saying to him, calm down, be quiet, you know. And my other half said, well, why don't you go and ask them what's going on? I was like, I don't want to walk into that.
You don't want to get involved.
I don't know what he's going to do.
I mean, one of the things about this, while you were just saying that, I keep thinking about this flags thing that's happening, you know, the Operation Raise the Colours. And this is people, in a way, it's kind of putting their foot down, isn't it? And saying, no, actually, we want to assert
country.
Our identity.
Yeah, don't forget who this land belongs to.
And it's a very simple protest, but the fact pretty much everybody is doing it. I was walking down the street where I live the other day, and in someone's back garden, a Union flag and a cross of St George. It's an incredibly powerful way of saying no.
But it's also it's so very British and very beautiful because it's quite sophisticated. It's playing the opposition at their own game.
Yes.
The ones who, as we heard earlier from Jeremy Kyle, the Essex Council, saying, well, if you've been traumatised by seeing the St George's Cross, we're going to offer you special, you know, safe spaces, all the rest. You know, what's her face, Emily Thornby, sneering during the Rochester by-election of, was it 2015 or 2014, you know, someone hanging a cross of St George outside their house. It's basically saying, OK, I dare you to come and tell us that we are not allowed our own nation's flag. Go on. Do it.
It's asserting yourself, and of course the juxtaposition there, you know, our own flags, our own culture, which speaks to us, versus what's the other real symbol of really what they're about? It's the Palestinian flag, isn't it? You know, they're all over the place, and they were flying immediately after October the 7th.
Yeah.
Places like Tower Hamlets, for example, who are now
Shocking.
saying these flags are dangerous, they're awful, take them down. They were happy to fly the Palestinian flag, and that is a symbol of a country that's going, this country that's going wrong. It's a balkanized state. You know, it's a separation. I mean, it's such a deep separation, isn't it? A philosophical separation. So let's get rid of all that and let's start flying our own flag. And if they tell us that it's poisonous, if they tell us that the colour of our skin is poisonous, if they tell me that I'm a poison, you know, I've got poisonous masculinity, we can just say no. We just push back now because there are so many of us, and we can actually feel safe in numbers. There is safety in numbers, and we can really begin
are the
to
majority.
take
We mustn't
it back.
forget that.
Yeah, but we mustn't be silent. If you're a silent majority, you might as well not be there.
That's true.
And that's the point.
Let's read some messages, actually, because I've only just sort of clicked the right buttons on my screen to make them appear. Paula in Southampton says, I've just come back from visiting my local restaurant in Southampton. Unfortunately, it's next to and above the restaurant is an immigration hotel. The effect this is having on the restaurant is unreal. They've lost 25% in revenue. They have to escort female staff to their cars at night in fear. This restaurant has always flourished. It's really sad to see. I mean, this is the thing. Now, you know, when estate agents will tell you the unspoken rule of house prices up and down is immigration.
But the thing, I mean, that must never become normalised. That must never become normalised. We must always, again, as I say, we must always push back on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'd say the restaurant was called Chino, I think, or Ceno, don't know how you say it, C-E-N-O, in Southampton. If you live in Southampton, pay them a visit. Yeah. Go and give them your support. Has anyone thought about how much easier it will be for the migrants to coerce young girls into houses of multiple occupancy where they could be drugged, raped and or sexually abused instead of a hotel? Yes, I have. That is my big concern here. Because when these men, when no one's watching them come in and out, when they're not sharing bedrooms, when they got their own front door keys in quiet neighbourhoods and there's nobody monitoring them, they will be trying to get these teenage girls back to their houses. It is so dangerous.
Well, this is what we had with the Pakistani heritage rape gangs, isn't it? You know, coercing girls, bringing them back, drugging them, plying them with drink and taking them upstairs above a kebab shop or down in a basement below a kebab shop, you know, where it's quiet, where it's private. Again, that is a big issue.
Give a sex pest a lair and he's going to try and lure people into it. It's very easy. Becca in Norfolk makes a very interesting point. I hope the government does win tomorrow. I'd rather know where these criminals are than in houses around my town. I'd actually love them in a field in tents and guard dogs, but we won't get that with Labour. I mean, with Becca all the way. I almost say be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Because when all these hotels close down, where have these people gone? They've fallen into the cracks of society, and in many respects it's worse. Ali says turn Marston into a porter cabin or tent city to house the migrants. It was fine during COVID to have 20,000 lorries and drivers stuck there for days on end. Why can't that be done? Exactly. During COVID, they closed all of the service stations, even the public bathrooms that lorry drivers used. They couldn't even go and buy a sandwich. There was nowhere to wash. My dad was a lorry driver for most of his life. He slept in the back of his cabin.
As they do.
Yeah. 5 nights a week, he slept in the back of his cabin. And why do these men somehow need to be staying in the Ritz? It's crazy. It's crazy. Right, we better take a short break because we'll start losing all of our timings. But don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the Home Office's incentives to try and bring down the backlog of asylum claims. And it doesn't make for pretty reading. That's after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Interesting points here, and I totally agree with this. So I was just saying, go and support the restaurant China in Southampton because they're really having a hard time because of their new neighbours. So go and show them that you're going to stand by their side. But conversely, I agree with this. Paul in Northern Ireland says if and when migrants leave the hotels, everyone should boycott every hotel that housed migrants, slap it into them and let them go bust for their greed.
It's a great point.
I think it's a great
really
point.
good point.
Yeah.
I think we should be doing more of this stuff. We need to be. What I like about the flags thing, it's kind of performative activism, isn't it? And as the silent majority, as the kind of conservative middle right, we tend to kind of balk at that, don't we? And that's what the other side do. They create all of the fuss. They do all of the stupid things.
Or the boycotts
and all of that. No, we've got to speak with our wallets, okay? We've got to be heard, that's the point, and we've got to be seen to do those things as well. That's the only way we get things done.
I
because
agree.
The people who really call the shots here are the absolute minority. They are the identitarian, wokerati, the guardianistas and all that. They're a tiny percentage.
I would love to see a list of all the big hotel owners who have allowed their hotels to become migrant hotels, because I would imagine not many of them are British nationals. Talking about speaking with their wallets, the Home Office agree with you. That is a great way to go about things, apparently, because they're going to be paying civil servants 75 quid bonuses per asylum case that they've rushed through. So basically, they can earn extra 350 quid a month by increasing the amount of cases they approve or reject. This is to cut the backlog. Now, first of all, I am sick to death with incentives being given for people just doing their blimmin' job. You're paid by the taxpayer. You're supposed to be efficient. You shouldn't be sitting at home under a cruddy slanket. Don't ask for more money just to leave your sofa and come to the office. You know, and don't expect by meeting targets that you should get any more money. In fact, the converse should be true. Far too often in the world of civil service, if people fail at their job, nothing happens. Not in the same way. Yeah,
they get promoted.
Not in the same way in the private sector. Whereas if you're not getting it done, you might find yourself with a pay cutter out the front door. But the big worry about this, of course, is you know what happened. I'm assuming that we know what happens when there's a sort of ticking clock of make sure you get as many people processed as possible just for the optics, just so old Lego head can stand at his lectern and say to the nation, the Labour Party have cut this asylum backlog by 100,000. Yeah, what have you done? You've probably...
It's like me with Kev again.
You've probably given them all the right to stay here. In fact, I read some advice from the Refugee Council who have said, how about all the people from the countries which basically automatically get given asylum because they're from those countries? We just do that anyway. And actually, when they come to the country, we immediately give them a house they can rent and a job they can take. I'm like, oh, so which are these countries, pray tell? It is like the who's who of human scum countries. It's the terrorist countries. It's the war-torn countries. It's the countries where you think, if I let old, Mohammed over here come and, set up shop from wherever it may be, whether it's Sudan, Somalia, Syria, I don't know whether he's one of the people going around slashing open throats or whether he's someone running from that.
Oh, I mean, look, the first priority of any government is to look after its people, right? Number one, 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, top of the agenda. And here we are. It's obscene that they're offering incentives to be shoddy, to rush things through. And how many, because we'll probably get to know at some stage, how many of these things that have been rushed through are going to result in the rape of children, the rape of women, sexual abuse, murder, acid attacks, and God knows what. You talk about the violence of this, and I've been on the receiving end of that. I was stabbed in Manchester.
You were?
Yeah, but a long time ago, 20 years ago, by a gang of Somalis, and so this. in some respects, this is nothing new, right?
Well,
but
did they
in
just
other
jump you?
respects, they jumped me. A gang of 6 of them.
On the rob, trying to nick you?
To nick my phone, okay? The difference between then and now is I was just walking home late one night. It was raining. It was a summer night, and I didn't think anything was going to happen.
Sketchy part of town, or?
It was on Wilmslow Road in Manchester near Plattfields. You probably know it.
Yeah, no, not that sketchy, really.
No, right. But
I mean, I sort of place I would walk.
But here's the point, right? At that time, I didn't think that was going to happen to me, right? Now, I would assume that that's going to happen to me. There is no way I'd walk through Manchester on my own late at night. Once in the back and once in the buttock. So I had to sit for a week, sat in state with one cheek off the
I mean, just to
a
nick
chair.
it. You know, they bring knives to the party every time. It's a very stabby culture. I'm sorry, it is a stabby culture.
It's a stabby culture. It's always been a stabby culture. And if you're bringing people from Somalia, Mogadishu, the craziest, most dangerous place on earth, if you are bringing them here, not to mention Afghanistan, you are going to get problems. You are going to put your own society, your own people at risk. And as I say, the first priority is not to do that. And yet they do that over and over again. And they think it's virtuous. This is the problem, right? They think it's virtuous. They think they're doing the right thing. They're putting these poor people first. They're economic migrants, okay? It's as simple as that.
No, exactly.
And they're preying on women
I'm beginning to also say they're also sexual migrants, some of these men, because I think a big pull factor. I mean, the people traffickers are advertising their services by using videos of British girls on a night out. And then you see some of the videos that these TikTok migrant influencers are making, and they're the ones sitting on Bournemouth Beach doing the whole, look at all the ladies in the bikinis. Of course they are, because back at then, they hadn't even seen someone's face for 20 years. Talking about countries where you don't see a woman's face, Afghanistan. So there's going to be, I know, as soon as Lego Head comes back from his sojourn, is sort of, break glass emergency leave a statement. It was Liz Truss at one point to be like, we're Liz Truss in the economy. Now he's going to say Farage wants to do a deal with the Taliban. He's going to love that, isn't he?
But can I just interject there? The EU are already doing deals with the Taliban, and Germany has already sent 100 of them.
Germany is sending them back. And how are they doing it? With armed escorts, 900 quid handouts. Apparently took a colossal legal, political and diplomatic juggling act to get the wheels off the ground. They used Qatar as a go-between. The Qataris are fairly decent to us, can I just say. Out of all the people in that neighbourhood, we seem to have a fairly decent relationship with them as an interlocutor. Fine. So let's just do this. If Germany are able to stick 81 Afghans on a Qatar Airways plane at Leipzig, fly them home via Qatar, accompanied by 49 armed Qatari security guards, there were no representatives from Afghanistan or the Taliban, then great. I mean, I'm happy to do that.
I mean,
you can't be like, wow, just because we don't like the people in that country running it, better not send people back there. What sort of a nonsense logic is that?
I mean, I'm up and down with reform, because one week they sound brilliant and the next week they sound really flaky. But I thought he was absolutely on form there. I thought he was absolutely right. He's talking, what, 600,000 in 5 years? I think that's absolutely. I think that's absolutely great. He did roll back a little bit because he said, well, we're not talking about women and children. That's fair enough. OK, that's politics. You have to, it is give and take. But he is talking about young men.
Well, there's only about 2 women and children anyway.
There's one child and a granny. That's it.
And I'm happy for them to stay.
But it's amazing, again, that we're talking in these terms, that we're talking remigration, that we're talking deportation. We will be talking voluntary remigration before too long. That's going to come on the table, and the sooner it does, the better, because the Scandinavian countries are already doing that because they're in a terrible situation because of mass immigration. It's just a shame that the plane has to crash into the mountain. We have to get beyond catastrophe. Everybody has to be in danger before we do something about it.
Yeah, it almost has to reach the point that it's very hard to reverse any of this before we go, well, that was a bad idea. OK, we're going to take a cheeky little break now, but when we come back, I mean, the BBC, they just can't help themselves, can they? Anybody in the TV industry these days can't seem to help themselves when it comes to casting for certain things. So we're going to be talking about that after this break.
basis to the UK. We spend a lot of money on it. Julia, I served on the committee. I was in Parliament. I know the
250 people.
It was
250 people being sent to Rwanda was not going to deter 28,000 people arriving.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, the other day I saw advertised on the BBC that there's a big spangly new historical drama, all based on 1066 and all that. The Norman Conquest. And I'm really fascinated by this period of time. It's not a period of time I know a great deal about. Yeah. It's a period of time I want to know more about, because like, there's Normanity, if you will. It runs through my veins. My family are descendants of the Normans. Gloucester Cathedral, where I'm from. I was actually at Durham Cathedral as well. Gloucester Cathedral started being built in the Norman ages. Durham Cathedral, a brilliant, resplendent sort of symbol of Norman architecture. My brother lives down on the south coast, where you've got sort of, Hastings and Battle, and you've got the sort of 1066 walk, and it's such an important time in our history. And I thought that would be great. I would love to see how we did things back then.
Well, you're not going to know if you watch this, believe me.
All right. So tell me, what are they up to? What are they doing?
This is our old friend colourblind casting, really, here, which is catastrophic because it isn't colourblind casting. That's a it's racist casting. Because as we know, it only works one way. Okay, you're not going to have a white man like me playing Nelson Mandela in any kind of a drama anytime soon. Okay, so they take massive liberties with historical fact as well. Now, it's a drama, okay? It's not a documentary, and that's what dramas do, because they have to they have to have lines of action. There needs to be conflict. There needs to be resolution. It needs to work on television. It needs to be a television narrative. All of that kind of stuff. That's fine. But if they don't preserve some kind of spirit of truth, which they are not doing here, then it just becomes absolute nonsense.
I find this disgusting. I find it insulting. I find it debasing. The Normans, people think they're French. They were. They were Vikings. They were Norsemen who came from Scandinavia and invaded France and took over that part of France, and from there levelled an assault against us and did a very good job of it. They were blondes. They looked like me. And you know what? White people are the global minority, and among white people, other than the gingers, we're also the minority. And we got recessive genes. Everyone else outbreeds us, right? You mingle with anyone else, you ain't getting blonde-haired kids. We have a whole host of specific illnesses we deeply enjoy. Asthma and, sickly things like asthma and eczema and, sunburning and things like that. Blonde, I am so sick to death of blondes being appropriated by everyone. Beyonce, Kim Kardashian, all like, the blonde hair. Lady Gaga. All these people being all blonde. And then they have the blimmin' audacity, the one lot of blonde people who came and invaded this country and, spread their wild oats.
To turn them black.
They're now turning them into what? Like Idi Amin or something. Like, come on! Leave us alone. We get to have our own little slither of ancient history.
But the thing with the costume drama is, like you said it before, you want to be taken away. You want to be taken into the past. You want to get rid of. You want to remove yourself from Keir Starmer's Britain, and you want to go somewhere nicer. Okay, but you can't do that with this because it's also got anachronistic language. Okay, so it's got modern kind of London type language.
So it's William the Conqueror coming over of like his
yeah.
ghetto pass going, "Hey, blood,"
It's doing that kind of thing, and it makes it sound ridiculous. And this is what they all do in all of these dramas now. You know, it's kind of, let's make Shakespeare accessible. It's all, you know, let's do street dance Shakespeare. Let's make Shakespeare accessible. The one thing about Shakespeare is the poetry, the English poetry.
Yes.
It's amazing.
And you have to have it. If you don't have the scansion and the inversion and the assonance and the consonance and the iambic pentameter, it just doesn't make, it's nothing.
But what they're doing with Hamlet at the moment, they're doing exactly the same thing. So Hamlet is ending his soliloquy with the word "in it." You know.
Oh, don't. Oh, well, do you know, on that note, we're going to end our soliloquies. It's been a pleasure having you here, Philip. It's the first time we've sort of shared a studio
Have
together.
me again.
Can we do that again? I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, don't go anywhere. Coming up after the break, I have a man who's put 2 fingers up at loads of money being offered to him to house migrants in his hotel. He's going to be there telling us why he done it. Great man. He's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Look, someone's just messaged me, Richard in Kettering, saying things are kicking off at the Bell Hotel this evening. It's obvious that the statements by the Home Office lawyer that the rights of legal migrants are more important than the rights of British citizens has proved to be somewhat provocative. I knew that this statement would be inflammatory. Well, of course it blimmin' well is. In a country, surely the only rights that one should care about are the rights of their own citizens, not people who've decided to break into it illegally, for crying out loud. And a lot of people have been saying, and I absolutely love this, I don't know who said it first, but loads of people are agreeing that when come the day that these migrants are turfed out of their hotels, we should punish those hoteliers who decided to make a fast buck at the expense of social cohesion. And yeah, I totally agree with that. We should speak with our checkbooks. And a man, actually, so I saw a video that's gone viral on social media. A man who's a property investor, a man who was offered a huge sum to house migrants in one of his hotels, and he put a video online saying, nope, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm pleased to say Brilliant Samara reached out to Samuel Leeds, and Samuel Leeds is here in the studio. Heroes welcome. Heroes welcome.
Good to be on.
tell me, how did this come about? Did they just like sort of send some sort of letter in the post, or someone knock at the door?
You know what happened? So for a start, buy-to-let has been getting very difficult. So a lot of landlords are renting to these housing associations.
Yeah.
And I was one of those landlords. So I'd rent a lot of my properties, HMOs, big HMOs, to housing associations, and then they would put vulnerable people in where the council would pay.
And the vulnerable people largely at this point in time are sort of, young kids who...
You don't know exactly who they are, that's the thing. Like, when the first house that I rented out, I was told it was homeless people, and then when I went, I was a bit like, okay. But the rent is great, but then, there's connections, and it's all very mysterious because Home Office don't come to you direct and say, hey, I can give you some money. What happens is there's companies in between, and there's so many companies, and then they'll approach landlords, and then they'll offer a guaranteed rent, and then they'll take their money from the council.
So they basically say to the landlord, we'll manage the property for you, and then we're the ones who take the money from the Home Office, and we'll pay you. Yeah. And they pay above the odds.
It depends. I mean, I was offered £35,000 per month for a 7-year lease, well, 6 years and 11 months. So basically a 7-year lease. And all repairs, they were responsible. They're responsible for everything.
So money for nothing, basically.
Well, money for just owning the hotel.
Yeah. So you're not having to do the repairs. You're not having to do that.
And I was tempted, and I went through the heads of terms, and it just said vulnerable people.
Right.
And I thought, I'm going to press this a little bit and find out who these vulnerable people are. So I contacted the company that had put the proposal to me, who is a man I know. And he said, oh yeah, vulnerable people, might be some homeless people and asylum seekers, and I just thought, and the more I looked into it, I worked out the average asylum seeker, we pay £4,000 a month to house someone who's coming in. And then how much are our benefits if someone hasn't got a job? £1,000 at best.
Yeah.
So why are we paying 4 times as much for an asylum seeker or for someone that's come in? It doesn't make any sense, and that's when I just thought, you know what, I don't want to back this because I don't actually believe it's right, and I didn't. And then when I put the video out, I've been flooded with messages from people within the village that have just
saying thank you. I bet. Yeah, because that's it. I mean, if you had said yes to this, everyone, maybe not everyone, there might be the odd sort of short fringe placard waving lefty who'd think you were, I
had a few of those.
A wonderful human.
One person actually just today.
I think you're scum of the earth.
A guest left me a bad review and was offended because there's a Union flag in the hotel.
Oh, for crying out loud!
And of course, the person who's offended is a white English wokey who's all offended.
A wokatron.
That's the thing. Like, even my post, immigrants. My wife's an immigrant. Immigrants that have come in, that have worked their asses off to come in legally and do it properly, they agree with me.
Yeah, oh no, they do. They're the first people. It's always the
people. I'm African, I'm Italian, I'm this, and I agree with you. Oh, thank you for not doing it. Because it's not, the thing is, it's not fair. Why should we? And also, I'm not being funny, Alex, but my hotel's very nice. Yeah, boutique. I was there when I was doing the video, and I was just with the group.
Sort of. Were they about to, these migrants were basically going to be given the sort of the 4-poster bed, the luxury spa treatment, the sort of swan-shaped towel on the end of the bed?
Absolutely. It's in 3 acres of grounds. You're there at the window, beautiful. It's nicer than my house at home. And I was just thinking, fancy putting illegal immigrants that have come over, not paid anything, no visa. Like, that's mockery, that is.
It is. It's trolling us.
And it is trolling us. Part of that, and for me to say, it's all right, I'll just take the money. 35 grand every month for 7 years. That's about £3 million. It worked out just under £3 million, and that would have been passive, but doing nothing. But I just thought, you know what, but interesting, since I put the video out, I've had loads of bookings from people that have said, let's go and stay.
I love this. We're just going to take a quick call now, because apparently your microphone's playing. It's not your fault, it's our fault. I had doomed earpieces the other day. I actually had to run to the toilets at one point with a pair of tweezers and extricate one of the fuzzy ends of the earpiece out of my ear canal, because that was basically what was going on there. We're having all sorts of tech issues at the moment. I don't know why. It's all falling apart. It must be the cost of living crisis. I'm going to blame Sir Keir Starmer for the lot of it. Actually, earlier on today, my earpiece almost got torn out by the fact that the bit it plugs into had decided to somersault off the little table. So bear with us while we're rewiring Samuel so we can actually hear all the wonderful things he's saying, because I tell you what, you don't want to miss any of it. That was very good calling across the floor, can I just say, Faith? because there's a little camera here, poor Faith had to sort of come on her hands and knees and creep across the carpet up to Samuel. But I think you've now been rewired. Is that right, Samara? We liking that? It's all good? Sound good? Everyone in there, everyone in the gallery happy? We happy and we know it? Clap our hands. Woohoo! Right, let's go. So £3 million. And in the back of your head, were you also thinking, you know, this is, if it's, it's a hotel where you're from as well? Is it your neck of the woods?
I don't live there. No, it's in Cambridgeshire, Willingham House. It's called a little village called Willingham. Very boutique, very nice. And yeah, it was tempting. It was very tempting. I almost did it.
Oh, huge. I mean, a lot of people would have their heads turned by £3 million for doing nothing.
Yeah.
Of course they
would.
Well,
they are, aren't they? Look at all the hotels that are taking the money.
Yeah.
And I mean...
I want to know who these people are because, you know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would have their heads turned by that amount of money. It's almost ridiculous. It's almost illogical to turn it down. But I would be there in the back of my head thinking, I have basically just pressed the button to screw up an entire village.
Yeah.
You know, all these people whose house prices are going to plummet, whose daughters don't feel safe,
You're right,
who suddenly want to move out, who can't sell their properties.
It's common sense, isn't it? Who would you rather live next to? Would you rather live next to a hotel where they're doing weddings, which is what we're going to be doing next year now? Now we've decided to take it back. Weddings, nice, holiday makers, in a lovely hotel, or would you rather it be some government contract with who knows who is in there? It's quite obvious, isn't it?
So talk to me about like HMOs as well, because we're hearing, you know, asylum hotels are now, well, if there is, of course, this counter appeal by the government against the ruling over the Bell Hotel in Epping Forest, which of course will potentially create a blueprint for other local authorities to challenge the existence of migrant hotels within their communities. But the government sort of saying, well, we're going to close them all down. And they want to close them all down by putting these people into HMOs. And as a woman, and a lot of women have been messaging me today agreeing with me, I find that even worse. And I'll tell you for why. I hate the hotel thing. I don't understand why, if you're a genuine asylum seeker, or if you're from such a, you know, flea-ridden, horrible hellhole of a country where you've probably come from somewhere without electricity and running water, or you've been in France in a bin bag bivouac in the dunes of Calais for so long, that, you know, why we can't just create temporary, secure, clean, hygienic encampments that are safe for these people, but it doesn't have to be hotels. When it comes to some of these young men being put into house of multiple occupancy, at least with a hotel, it's a bit difficult to take the 14-year-old girl you've chatted up off the park bench back to your bedroom. It's a bit difficult to be there cutting up meth on the countertop. I also know, I've got a friend who's in a similar business, but he looks after young adults with learning difficulties and people who need that sort of sheltered accommodation. But he's got people in that sort of, in that world. And there was someone whose house had been turned into a migrant HMO, and they had a really nice induction hob. And these people had literally taken a mallet or something to the induction hob, smashed it in, caved it in, and put charcoal in the cavity to cook their food that way. You just think, for crying out loud. But the idea of, you know, 6 Syrians, Somalis, Afghans, men from deeply misogynistic cultures who have probably been sexually deprived throughout their lives, where women aren't even allowed to show their face, living in a house where they could basically, you know, like the Pakistani rape gang, say to a young girl, oh, come back, have some drink, have some cigarettes, come to the bedsit. I just think it's going to be so dangerous. It's so much harder, one would assume, to actually bring guests overnight to the hotel. So I wanted to get your opinion on that, as someone who has HMOs. If they were to turn around and say, well, look, you know, you have these private residential properties, would you be happy taking 6 guys who have previously been in the Bell Hotel in Epping Forest? Will you have the same approach? Will you also say no? Because actually, I don't know about the next door neighbour and the people over the street and... Yeah,
it's a tough question because I think a boutique, beautiful hotel manor house is not appropriate. I mean, for me, that was very clear. A HMO, I mean, I've not had it happen. I've not had anybody approach me. For me, it's easy because if I disagree with a principle, I can say no because I'm doing all right financially. But the problem is most landlords now they're bringing in these new taxes, and they're going to charge national insurance
on rental income.
Not for the big companies, not for BlackRock. Not for Lloyds Bank, for the small companies.
For Mr. Jones, who instead of, you know, a pension invested in some property.
So what's going to happen is all of these landlords that aren't making enough money, with their rents, because the average landlord makes £2,000 a month. Once national insurance comes in, wealth tax, sales tax. After Keir Starmer said, we won't increase taxes for working people. Hang on, landlords that have got 2 or 3 houses that are making a couple grand a year off each property, they're working people. So he's lied.
Yeah.
To me, that is a blatant lie. So what's happening is these people are being then bribed by these housing associations. If you Google housing association, and some are good. I've got houses where I do house people that have been on the streets, women that are fleeing domestic abuse.
Right.
You've got safe houses. Refugees or asylum seekers. I mean, is there a place for that?
There was a sort of thing back in the day, certainly about 10, 20 years ago, that if someone said we're, housing a refugee, people would have said, yeah, that's fine, because we sort of had a sense that these people were genuine refugees and had come to this country.
It's the amount of money, though, Alex.
It's just a huge multinational industry of people trafficking, of criminality, of sex tourism. I'll say this over and over again. I'm sorry, as a woman, a lot of these men come from very sexually repressed societies, and part of the pull of coming to the West is to come and, sow their wild oats. It is, without a doubt. When you see a lot of them coming over with their snatchy,
but we've got
jackets and their new trainers.
We've got a housing shortage. So, as you say, maybe if we were to create something more appropriate, but to spend £4,000, the taxpayers' money is spending up to £170 per night per asylum seeker. I'm sorry, I've got good friends that are on housing benefits. They don't get that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem. I mean, I understand if someone's fleeing. There's a place. I'd like to think I'm compassionate.
If you're fleeing, you've not gone through 8 countries, right? And you've not been paying criminals thousands of pounds.
Alex, I'm not a politician.
And chucking your documents in the sea.
I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman.
Yeah.
I didn't want my hotel to be flooded with anybody who was not a holiday maker, a tourist, a business professional. It's a hotel.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. In terms of what the policy should be, it's a very complex situation.
Definitely do bear in mind, if they come and knock him,
which they probably will.
They will.
Very soon.
Oh, they will.
Although they're upset with me now. I'm now getting Serco just tweeted, it wasn't us. We never made a formal offer. But here's how they work. Right? Here's how they work. There's all these companies. I think there's backhanders or something. Right? There's all these companies that will set up a company and then they'll introduce, and it's like rent to rent to rent.
So Serco will give the tender to,
I don't know,
something else. Who might get the tender to something else, and then finally that person's already knocks on your door and says...
All I know is there's so much money that the government give for asylum seekers and other people that probably don't deserve the money. There's so much money, billions and billions of pounds every single year that people can afford to go, I'll pass to you, then you can pass to that guy, and everyone makes money. There's so much money.
There is basically an illegal immigration industrial complex, from the people traffickers to the human rights lawyers to these, all these people offering these services. There are people making a shed load of money out of it, aren't they?
So it's an interesting one, but for me, the hotel, I decided to keep it a hotel. Hopefully it will do well. I'm sure it will. It's doing okay, but it's doing okay. My HMOs, I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Just bear in mind the women, because a lot of women have messaged me today, before you came on, and not about this, we were talking about this in the first half of the programme as it happens, but a lot of women saying, I hate the hotels, but I would feel really freaked out if all of a sudden
Next door neighbour.
Yeah. And what's going to happen to little girls then? Because I'm sorry...
Do you know another thing as well? You don't even need a HMO licence.
Do you not?
No.
So you could just come to anybody who's got a property and say, will you have some...
They have made it so attractive and so easy to rent to companies like Serco. It's commercially, it is a no-brainer. I mean, I've got good friends that literally just buy houses, rent them out to Serco, and they've got hundreds of houses, and that's their whole business model.
And that's it. Buy a house, rent to Serco.
Yeah, that's it. And these big companies, Lloyds Bank, BlackRock, the fact they're pushing out small landlords, I think they're going to take all the properties off the small landlords, and then who knows what could happen.
Wow. Of course, Serco have said quite publicly, haven't they? Not us, we didn't do it.
Yeah.
No, nothing to see here.
It wasn't Serco.
It wasn't Serco. But no, it is. Look, it's been fascinating talking to you. You've done the right thing.
I appreciate that. And it was nice, the support that I got from the public, because I thought, man, my lawyer told me, even my wife was like, oh, don't post that because people are going to... And I said, you know what, though?
But you're on the side of the British people.
I'm happy to die on this mountain.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah.
And I posted it, but actually the support was overwhelming. So thank you for having me on, and thank you to everybody, and thank you to everyone that's booked. The bookings at Willingham House have gone up mad.
Hey,
So,
there you go.
You know what? On the house, if you want to ever come and stay in a beautiful mansion, you're very welcome.
That you do realise this has gone out to, in public now.
I'd love to have you there. We'll have coffee together, come down, check the mansion out.
I'd love it.
Sounds great.
Hell yeah, I could do with a nice sort of dirty weekend away with the other half. Let's get on the diary. Oh, it's been fantastic.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Alex.
much, Samuel, for being in the studio. What a great man. It does matter standing up for your principle. It does matter saying that actually we all have a part to play if we want to see this country defended, if we want to see British values preserved. You know, it's like sort of I'm looking at the man in the mirror by Michael Jackson, isn't it? If you want change, you've got to be part of that change. You can't just say, well, I'll let somebody else pick up the slack in all forms of life. So I love the fact that British people are festooning our country with our national flag. They're brilliant people. I'm all for the Patriots. But I also like people like Samuel here, who is taking a privileged stance, a principled stance, and saying, I don't agree with this, and the answer is no. OK, we're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, there has been a huge amount of consternation at the idea that one of the so-called ISIS Beatles, the gang of 4 men who were beheading people over in Syria back when ISIS were at their peak, has been applying to leave American prison and come back to the UK. We're going to be discussing that with former anti-ISIS fighter Mesa Gifford after this.
In Q1 of 2025, there was 451,000 properties up for listing, of which 70,000 of those were ex-rentals. So if they're ex-rentals, it means those landlords wanted to sell them.
Yep.
And if they wanted to sell them, they wanted to sell them with vacant possession because they would get more money. And that means tenants are being asked to leave, whether it goes to court in a broken system or whether they leave voluntarily. It's a worry, you know, because landlords are needed in this industry because people need to sleep somewhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Do you know, I still remember the harrowing footage, the videos of the beheadings, locking people up in tanks, setting them on fire in these cages, the indescribable medieval barbarism of ISIS. And I remember distinctly the harrowing pictures of the four known as the ISIS Beatles because of their distinct British accents, their black, dark, lifeless, soulless, malevolent, evil eyes behind those balaclavas as they would yank someone's hair, pull their head back, exposing the... I mean, it was... When I picture evil, that is what I picture. Or the British terrorists who went over to join ISIS and committed such atrocities ended up largely in prison over in America. And I get the impression that prisons in America aren't exactly the sort of holiday parks, the sort of caged butlins that some of ours sometimes appear to be, at least to an outsider, although other people tell me that is not necessarily the case. But it turns out one of them, known as Jihadi Ringo, El Shafi El Sheikh, who was actually born in Sudan, of course he was, grew up in London, who has had his British citizenship revoked in 2018, has now made an appeal to leave America, prison in Colorado, under the International Prisoner Transfer Program, and move back to Britain. In fact, Mr. Trump's deputy assistant, Sebastian Gorka, a man I know well and I'm quite fond of actually, has called on the UK to honour a commitment to take back ISIS Brits. Understandably, the family of his victim are extremely worried that he could be moved to somewhere like London's Belmarsh, where apparently lags have access to TVs and games consoles and gyms and workshops and mosques, and of course they can hang out with all their other Islamist friends who tend to run the joint. Apparently he has applied so he can be closer to his family and friends. Mate, you left this country to go and join a barbarian regime abroad who you wanted to take over the world. They didn't win. You deprived people of having family and friends. You, my friend, can rot in jail in America. I find it absolutely disgusting. I can perfectly imagine the fear, how triggering this is, for want of a better word, for the victims of those abhorrent barbaric crimes. Well, let's speak now to Mesa Gifford, who, brilliant man, went out, a mercenary, let's say, who went out to fight against ISIS. When you read this story, what was your reaction, Mesa?
Well, I think people need to understand that El Shafi El Sheikh is one of the worst terrorists on the planet. This is a man that has shown absolutely no remorse for his crimes. This is someone that stayed within the Islamic State from the very beginning as an associate of the so-called Jihadi John. And he is responsible for the deaths of a lot of innocent people, the barbaric and brutal murder of innocent journalists and humanitarians. So this is a guy that is in jail in Colorado, in a supermax prison, and he is determined to play the system and come back to the UK. Bearing in mind, it costs £50,000 a year on average to jail a British prisoner. This guy's, I think, 37 years old. If he lives to 80, it's going to be at least several £1 million that the British taxpayer will be liable for. So we've just got to put the public first on this one. And also, of course, the victims. David Haynes' own brother said that his sentencing brought him some closure. So why are we opening this up and bringing them the trauma, as you said before?
Yeah, and I do get the impression, I mean, look, I've never set foot inside a high-security prison in the United Kingdom, but you do get the impression that we have this sort of strange approach to human rights in the United Kingdom, where we trip over ourselves, we bend over backwards to make sure that criminals are given a nice and cosy time. We only heard the other day, I can't remember which prison it was, about a particular Islamist, one of the 7/7 conspirators, who was sort of pouring hot liquids on people. It was the brother of the Ariana Grande Manchester Arena bombing, I think, in that occasion. But you kind of think, why are they wandering around making themselves cups of tea? You also hear how there's a stranglehold of Islamic gangs inside our prisons, and the absolute audacity of this guy saying, I want to be close to my family and friends. I really hope that this government picks up the phone to the White House and says, look, you know, you've got to understand how horrific this will be for British people and the precedent that it may then set.
Absolutely. I mean, the US chose to bring him to the United States. The UK was actually happy to have him imprisoned in Syria, in one of the SDF jails, where currently something like 80,000 prisoners are being held. So the US brought him over to the United States. They tried him. He was found guilty, I think, for given 8 life sentences. And as far as I'm concerned, he's exactly where he needs to be, because if I'm honest, I trust their justice more than ours. In the UK, we've seemingly lost sight of what a real victim is. There are so many cases. It's not just terrorism. It's just many other things, from murder to muggings to everything else. We're forgetting who the victims are, and we're putting far too much focus on treating people's feelings and supporting them and being there for them or whatever, and putting their interests in front of the interests of the wider public. So I hope the US and El-Shafi al-Sheikh is given short shift on this one. Hopefully common sense prevails, and hopefully the dialogue next will be, how can we start getting our saving money in our prisons? How can we get more terrorists into prisons? How can we actually start bringing in legislation that's genuinely going to keep us safe? That's the conversation we should be having, not whether or not we should bring this brutal terrorist back to the UK. It's madness.
Yeah, I have to say congratulations to the Sun newspaper for their front page. Here it is, if you're looking on the telly box at me right now, because at least this is going to put pressure on the government by shining a light onto it. The terrible optics if the ever reliably woke Lord Hermer, who seems to be an absolute advocate for international law, suddenly starts telling Sir Keir Starmer, well, you know, it breaks some sort of convention, it'd be, you know, in contraposition to a particular treaty because he deserves the family right. I mean, no. I'm really glad the Sun newspaper have run with this. And Mesa, I agree with you. You know, as someone who, I've certainly not got an international footprint like you, and I haven't been to the sort of crazy places you've been, but I spent a lot of time in far-flung corners of the world, and it is amazing. We are so out of step with the rest of the world when it comes to this crazy approach to giving rights to prisoners. And it's just, I don't understand how we've become this nation.
I think we've just lost sight, as I said, of who the victim is. And oftentimes the politicians will turn around and say, well, we've signed up to the European Convention of Human Rights, we've done this, we've done that, somehow as if we are completely hamstrung by these treaties. And Parliament is sovereign. An act of Parliament can withdraw us from these things. We were able to leave the European Union. Why can we not leave the European Convention of Human Rights? It's absolutely insane. The UK has a strong tradition of human rights, of free speech, of democracy, individual liberty. It inspired revolutions around the world, including in the United States. And so we've got this proud history that has been completely undermined over the last few years by utter nonsense coming from Europe. It's coming from leftists and woke politicians who don't have a grip on reality and really don't put the British public first. Because the British public, if you ask, I call it the sort of pub test. If you go into the pub and you talk to people, usually you get back common sense. And the trouble is, in Parliament, they do not have that value. Their value is one of bureaucracy, of putting the terrorist and the perpetrator first, and just not listening to people. It's madness.
Are you back in Blighty for a while now, Mace, or are you off fighting a good fight somewhere?
I'm back in the UK at the moment. I've got some plans to deliver some humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and I'm currently writing a book, just sort of putting down some of my experiences, but very different to what I've done in the past. So.
Yeah, you're an incredible man. You really, I mean, one day someone needs to make a documentary all about you and your life story, because it is remarkable. And do you know what? Maybe you get to the point where you think, I just want to be a little bit safer now, and you should go into politics, because your sort of speech there about British values and divorcing ourselves from some of these international treaties that work against the national interest was utterly brilliant. I think you'd be excellent behind the dispatch box. That was Mesa Gifford, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic man. Now, I think it's your opportunity to throw in your 2 bits and have your voice heard on any of the topics we've been speaking about. I'm going to rattle through some of your messages just after the break, but I'd love to talk to some of you as well. So please do keep me company. The number to call, 0344 499 1000. It is your normal network rate, therefore it doesn't really cost you anything, does it? 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. You can also ping me over a cheeky voice note on WhatsApp. That is also 0344 499 1000. And we are on X if you want to rattle around the various columns of Elon Musk's social media site, at talkTV. I'm back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Alrighty, let's do calls, let's do messages. Let's do messages first, actually, because I haven't been very efficient so far today, have I? Hey, Alex, great show as usual. Thank you. Samuel is spot on. Second home owners and renters will sell up. BlackRock will buy them all up. Another GB sellout. Remember, both Bill Gates and BlackRock came over to visit Stalin in his early days. This is the plan. What? Stalin went over to visit Bill Gates? Did he? How old was Bill Gates? Did he? I don't know about that. But no, there is this. It is quite frightening how these huge, faceless, multinational corporations are able to essentially strip farmland and private property and all the rest of it from citizens. We have less and less of a stakeholder in the operations of our own country, not just when it comes to being democratically ignored, but also just ownership. And again, you're not leftists, all about property is theft and all that. Alex, why can't jihadi Ringo be sent back to his home country of Sudan? That is exactly what Robert Jenrick said. Fine, his British citizenship's been stripped. If he wants to leave American jail, he can go back to Sudan. I don't want to call him jihadi Ringo, quite frankly. I think it's too cute. I think it's too nice. And I think it's a blimmin' insult to Ringo Starr as well. I just hope someone totals him in prison. Don't care that I said that. I just hope he's disgusting. Hi, Alex. HMOs. Councils can stop them if they have the will. Put an Article 4 direction in place in the area, which is apparently Article 4 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. This removes the landlord's automatic right to turn a house into an HMO and makes them need planning permission. Then turn the planning request down, says Mark in Blaengadw in Wales. Samuel hasn't said no for moral reasons. So Samuel would also say no to HMOs. Well, no, because Samuel's sort of saying he doesn't want his hotel, which is supposed to be a place of celebration and tourism, to send, you know, lovely boutique residents, to just be handed over to people who've broken into the country. But I did try and make the point to him that putting these men in private rental accommodation, in many respects, especially when it comes to the safety of women and girls, is worse. It might not be as audaciously as offensive as seeing these people on four-poster beds with croquet lawns, but when it comes to actually being able to monitor what they get up to, my view is these men in HMOs is even worse. Be careful what you wish for. Stick them all in a militarised encampment. It's so blimmin' easy. Imagine if the Home Office win against the people of this great country tomorrow in the Epping illegal migrants court case. It's two fingers up to us all. The communist government will have no chance of defending their smash the gangs rubbish then. Headlines will be Starmer smashes the Brits. TikTok videos will go wild. Headline, British government smashes the British people to give a free-for-all invitation to all. I'm honestly fuming. With this madness, a large glass of wine is required, says Martin from Lichfield. I mean, it's like I said, it's a rock and a hard place for Yvette Cooper. Not that I'm particularly worried about her. But if she doesn't overthrow this court ruling, it's going to set a case precedent and be the blueprint for other closures of migrant hotels up and down the country. Then she's got a problem on her hands. If she challenges this and wins, well, she's an unequivocal bad guy. But like I said, I'm afraid you will not find an iota of sympathy here. Right, shall we take some calls now and speak to Carol, who's in Warrington. Good evening to you, Carol.
Hi. I agree with a lot of the messages that you've just read out, and I understand what you mean about the fears of shutting down migrant hotels, and then I'm going into HMOs around the corner from me. But I do hope Labour does not win. I just would like them to lose this.
Yeah. I would love to see them lose, and I would love to see their hand forced, because they're not going to do it off their own backs. They're not going to turn around and go, right, the hotels are being closed, therefore we need to suddenly build a whopping great detention centre, or we need to convert a disused military base into a secure encampment. But they're not going to do that unless they've got absolutely zero options left. And so I hope that they lose. But I really, I found out the other day, my parents, that someone said to me, I don't know if it's true, but someone had said to me that they knew of some sheltered accommodation, which is, I'm not even joking, right next to the playing fields of my old primary school. Right? You couldn't make it up, could you? Which is now HMOs for asylum seekers. Asylum seekers, not asylum seekers, are they?
No.
And I thought, my mum trundles across those fields to go do her shopping down the supermarket where I used to work. And I found myself thinking, I'm very uncomfortable about this. If they decided to sort of trail my mum through those fields on her way back from the shops to nick her shopping or try and... Look, I'm not saying that all asylum seekers or migrants are people who inherently want to rob, steal, rape, attack and do us harm. I'd actually go as far as saying, I'm sure actually the vast majority don't want to, but without a doubt, and even when we looked at things like the Casey report and look at statistics on things like grooming gangs, the overrepresentation of asylum seekers. They say 75% of the high-end theft happening in the West End of London, luxury handbags and all the rest of it, is being done by people in these migrant hotels. So, the data speaks for itself. Would would any woman want these people on their street?
No, I wouldn't either, obviously not. But also, I would like to see a bit of retribution to the hotels that have happily taken money, not thought about the residents nearby. And if this doesn't go Labour's way, then their contracts with them hotels could be invalid. So all this money that they're relying on for the next 5 years that they've been told they can have from the government, that'll be gone. Yeah. Because, that they might not get their end of the contract neither. So, and then if people won't forget and they boycott these hotels will go out of business.
Yeah.
And in my mind, they deserve
I want a newspaper to name and shame the owners of these hotels who have taken these profitable contracts. A few have been named and shamed. I want to know them all. I want to know who's profiteering from the illegal immigration industrial complex. It's about time we, the British taxpayer, who ultimately are the ones putting money in their pockets, know who they are and can tell them that we don't want to do it. Carol, thank you ever so much. It's been wonderful taking your call. I've got a message here I want to read out from, I think it might be Elsa. Hi Alex, why is Nigel Farage not prepared to deport women and children? It's guaranteed more women and children will be sent to the UK so they can bring their husbands along as joining the family. I honestly think he's lost the plot. Rupert Lowe is right. They all need to go or they'll be in the UK forever and ever on benefits. Look, I don't agree with that, and I'll tell you why. I don't think Nigel said, look, I don't know where his position is. I think he said the priority is to get these single young men of fighting age out of the country first. And when it comes to women and children, there is a... Look, I remember, we were talking about ISIS, weren't we? Right? Not long ago. The ghoulish, ghastly, barbaric, pure, unfiltered, unhindered evil. The definition of evil. What those things, those abhorrent, bestial monsters did to little Yazidi girls and women, Christian women in those countries, it bears not even thinking about. And who did we take? Huh? Who did we take from Syria when it was all kicking off? Did we take the Yazidi Christian girls? No. We turned our back on them. No, we took the Muslim men instead, didn't we? So actually, you know, when it comes to this, I have no problem as a Christian in a Christian nation saying that when Christian women and girls are being taken as sex slaves, whether it's by Boko Haram, the Mujahideen, Al-Shabaab, ISIS, the Taliban, I have no problem in saying as a Christian nation, I will protect those Christian women and girls. So I think that there is a difference. And frankly, because we're talking about deporting people, there aren't exactly a gazillion loads of women and girls who have come over, are they? So I do think that the priority, which is what Nigel says, the priority initially is getting these young men of fighting age out is important. Whether I think that we should say, oh, we're only going to accept asylum seekers in the form of... I don't think he was saying that. I don't think Nigel was saying, oh, from now on we're going to accept women only and not men. Because, you know, in that regard, yes, if you say we only accept women, what will happen will be sham marriages. What will happen will be, you know, fake contracts where this person comes over because, you know, they say they're married to that person. You know, of course, people will game the system, but that isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about the initial phase of mass deportations, and I, for one, think it should be these young men of fighting age who go first. OK, right, let's take a short break now, because we're going to stick with the subject of women and standing up for the sisterhood, which is something I often try to do. I wrote a big piece on my Substack. That's what she said a while ago, saying, where the F are all the feminists? Because where are they? They seem to always be on the side of the people who do not have women's best interests at heart. Have they all gaslit themselves? Are they all such narcissists who want all the clicks and likes and the love and the bragging rights on social media that they're prepared to throw the safety, the integrity, the innocence, the futures and the legacy of our girls and our women under a bus to make themselves look good? Are they so gaslit and brainwashed that they cannot see that when they're saying that geezer in a frock with a beard should be able to come and waggle his tackle around in front of that 7-year-old having her first swimming lesson, that they are on the wrong side of this debate? Or that gnarly looking man who's just come over in a boat and is chatting up the 14-year-old on the park bench, that actually he's the victim? Why? What is wrong with these people? I'm going to be asking assistant editor of The Critic, Jo Bartosz, just this after the break, because she has raised exactly that point. Don't go anywhere.
Q1 for 2025, there was 451,000 properties up for listing, of which 70,000 of those were ex-rentals. So if they're ex-rentals, it means those landlords wanted to sell them.
Yep.
And if they wanted to sell them, they wanted to sell them with vacant possession because they would get more money. And that means tenants are being asked to leave, whether it goes to court in a broken system or whether they leave voluntarily. It's a worry, you know, because landlords are needed in this industry because people need to sleep somewhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Where the F are all the feminists? I'll tell you where they are. They're the ones with their mad short fringes and their placards cheering on the sex fetishising perverts who want to listen to little girls having a tinkle in the changing rooms or readjusting their tiny little minute string thong over their gonads. That's where they are. They're on the wrong side of the debate, aren't they? Where are they as well? Oh, yeah, that's right. They're standing outside the migrant hotels for all these men from sexually repressed countries who haven't even seen an ankle or an eyelash in 20 years, suddenly being allowed to just rove around freely and chat up little girls on park benches because they think that that is the right side of history to be on. Well, guess what? It is not. They're also the ones, unfortunately, and don't make me sound like some sort of modern-day Mary Whitehouse, who are also filling young girls' minds with this idea that it is empowering to fill your lips with silicone and have a butt implant and pose on Instagram and be like a Kardashian, and that it's just that liberty and empowerment to live in a hypersexualized society. They should be the ones doing what I've been doing for the best part of 4 years, which is banging on about the risk of lots of men from barbaric countries coming over here and what that means for girls growing up, or banging on about the fact that pornography is one of the greatest ills that is dismantling our society and leading to a hypersexualization that is having untold consequences on girls especially. But they're nowhere to be seen. And Jo Bartosz, brilliant assistant editor of The Critic, is asking much the same thing. I'm delighted to have her on the programme so we can moan about the lot of it. Hello, Jo.
Hello. Hiya. At this point, I feel the need to point out I am, in fact, a feminist.
Yeah, well, no, this is it. It's a dirty word now. I always just say that I'm on the side of the sisterhood instead, and I will fight bloody hard for girls. I don't care. I call it the other day called Fatima, who was like taking umbrage at the fact saying, you're painting all these migrant men as sex pests and, you know, blah, 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 and da-da-da. And I've been attacked by white men because I wear a hijab. And I said, listen, girl, I'm the first one to stand up and say you should be able to wear that hijab and not be attacked for it. But I also expect to be able to have my blonde hair out without being some sort of, you know, big shining beacon to someone who's just got off a boat.
I think that's fairly reasonable, yeah. Nothing to disagree with there, yeah.
But where have the feminists gone? Like,
well,
you know, why are these leftist women so beguiled by things that are just completely against the interests of women and girls?
Well, I think the problem is it's the ones that have got the microphone. It's the loud, noisy ones, the ones that get amplified, that tend to make the headlines and tend to get the attention. Actually, I think there was a huge grassroots feminist movement opposing this sort of thing. Everything from pornography, prostitution. It's just, you know, nobody really wants to listen to feminists, sadly. They prefer the corporate feminists who get sponsorship, who get, you know, their grants, who get, and that's sort of what the problem is. I think with regard to this specific issue, I think you're probably referring to an article I wrote today, which is in Spiked, which was calling out the fact that I think around 200 frontline women's organisations had signed a letter condemning the government and condemning ministers for suggesting that there might in fact be a problem with sexual abuse and rape and harassment from men in migrant hotels. I think that's an entirely fair thing to suggest that there could indeed be a problem importing people who have very different values. I mean, that doesn't seem like rocket science. That seems entirely reasonable. I think it does have to be seen in the context of the fact that actually, 90% of rapes are committed by men who are known to the woman. That's also a fact. So it's not a majority. It's not the majority of sexual violence. But I think if we believe women, then we also believe the women who say they feel threatened, who say they feel being harassed. So, it's either you believe women or you don't. And I think in this instance, it's very easy to dismiss the concerns of women who are genuinely fearful about what's happening in their communities.
I mean, this is it. People always throw the statistic like the majority of rapes in the UK are committed by white people. Well, yes, because we're a white majority country, so that should be borne out statistically. But it is still a disproportionate overrepresentation of men from other countries, particularly Muslim countries. And I'll tell you what, someone needs to dig down into the statistics of gang rapes, because gang rapes, them all getting together as a feral pack and doing it as some sort of sport, seems to be a particular proclivity of a certain group of men.
It is also something that obviously is then used as pornography, which then in turn, it tends to be recorded, and I think men then bond over the pornography, and this is something again that we're just not having conversations about, and I think it is changing the way we relate to each other as sexes. I think that there's a growing gulf between the way men and women relate to each other, and a real suspicion and hostility, and I think it is encouraging girls to see themselves as sexual objects and encouraging men to see women as prey, and I think that cuts across all nationalities. But at the same time, I do agree that there are specific problems with specific cultures that need to be addressed.
I mean, pornography, I'm so glad you brought this up. This is a topic that I've been banging on about for years. In fact, my previous employer, a broadcaster who I will not name, banned me from talking about that woman's stuff. They actually put a gagging order on me ever talking about this subject, but which is disgusting, because I think it's so important. Because when you look at the societal change since especially user-generated content pornography came along, and I'm preaching to the converted here, but for the audience, there are multiple problems with this. One is the provenance of the videos. You don't know if that woman's been trafficked, coerced, if she's on drugs, if this is a rape video that's been put up online. In fact, when Visa had to do an audit of all content on Pornhub, I think it's 88% of videos had to immediately be taken down. But also it's the content of these videos, and the fact that there was a survey done, I think, for the female magazine, for the Daily Mail, by Survation a number of years ago, of teenage girls. And when you look at the statistics of the amount of girls who have given oral sex but not even had their first kiss, who have had the alternative form of sex from the alternative pathway at the age of about 14 and haven't had their first kiss, the normalisation of slapping, spitting, all of these things that are just ultimately degrading, that instead women are being told, you should like this. The 50 Shades of Grey fallacy. You're not cool if you don't like this. There's something wrong with you. This is titillating. This is exciting. It has broken that most important of social contracts between a man and a woman when it comes to respect, when it comes to delayed gratification, and as a result we are so deeply unsafe that we've got to the point that we've got Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't ask for a more sort of horrific role model, could you? And I'm also seeing a rise in choking, which is now the second most common cause of strokes in women under 40, which is, something that was sort of niche, that was rare. And that's the problem with pornography. So, there are many problems, but that's one of the main problems, is that it lures you towards more and more extreme content, because what previously aroused no longer does. So we are seeing men effectively locked into cycles of more and more degrading and abusive content, and it is warping their idea of what sex is, of what women are, and we're just not talking about it. And I mean, I work quite closely with people in the women's sector, and for years they've been talking about pornogenic injuries in girls, in women. And it's like, where are the Cobra meetings? Why isn't this being taken seriously? Where's the sort of pandemic style response? Because it really is something is that threatening to the nature of what it even is to be human, that we need to start taking it seriously.
Jo, can I just say, you've got a book coming up, Pornocracy, on all of this. I'm going to be the first person to buy it. I want to work with you on this stuff. I've been banging on about this, for want of a better phrase, for years now, and I am so, so glad that you are sticking your head above the parapet, that you've done this brilliant body of work. Come back on my show. Let's actually sit in person and have a long conversation about this, because it is something that matters so much to me. And I think that, we need to be the vanguards on all of this. Jo Bartosz, excellent assistant assistant editor of The Critic, the magazine there. Going to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a jiff.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Honestly, I want to have Joe Bartosz back. We need to speak more about this. I have been talking, I really have been talking for years about the dangers of pornography. It's become so normalised in society that, and the amount of times I read things just breaks my heart, whether it's the way that teenage girls think that this is the way people interact in heterosexual relationships and this is the way they should be treated, which is heartbreaking. But it's also at the impact it's having on men. If you actually look at rates of erectile dysfunction in men under the age of 40, it's now 1/3. It used to be a percentage point. It's now 1/3 because their brains are being neurologically rewired. It's making them socially anxious, but it's destroying relationships. You know, someone was saying to me the other day that they know someone who said to their other half, oh, well, you know, shall we just all watch porn together? I'm like, look, I'm a Christian. I'm like, no, it's such a special, beautiful, intimate bond. Sharing that sort of, you know, that physical element of you that it's not, I'm sorry, you don't just invite all these other characters in, titillation in to sort of be your stimulant. That is reserved for the person you love. And actually, when you start breaking down and eroding those normatives, you end up with broken marriages, unhappy households, sad people, depressed people, risk takers, people who live off instant gratification, who as a result will never be fully gratified. And that's before I even got into the criminal element of some of these big porn websites. I could talk about it all evening, but I'm sure a lot of you sitting there going, don't, Alex. So I'm not, because actually I'll tell you what we have got coming up. You won't believe this. We're doing something very different tonight. We're going to put you and me through our paces, because I have got in this next segment an absolute marathon of massive media names. I have got figures the likes of which you didn't think I could book for this show. And not only have I got some massive names, I have got them all one after the other. You don't believe me, do you? You do what? You're like, no, you haven't. I have. I have got some of the biggest names in broadcasting, in politics, and we are going to rattle off interviews with the lot of them right now. Oh yeah, strap yourselves in. We're gonna kick it all off with the amazing Douglas Murray. Now, Douglas, thank you for so much for agreeing to come on the show. You recently won a defamation case that was filed against you, and how was that? What are your thoughts on it?
Yes, well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much for having me on. The person to whom you're referring is, of course, Mohammed Hijab, who filed a lawsuit against me, relatively speaking, a long time ago in 2022, if my memory serves me correctly. He attempted to bully and browbeat me and shout his way to victory, only to have his case and himself, of course, tossed out like a fat sack of rotten potatoes. I mean, what else are you supposed to do, Alex, with an individual who appears to watch zealously rubbing his hands together with glee, as we all witness the strange death of Europe?
Now, I have seen, of course, the Joe Rogan and Dave Smith interview they've just done again together. You took umbrage a bit last time. And did you actually see Rogan started talking about that famous debate that you did with him? What am I supposed to say about it? I'd heard about it. I didn't watch it. I have far more important things to do, Alex, than watch them, such as, I don't know, Urinate. Do you think I've got more important things to do than turn on a podcast featuring comic Dave Smith, who, by the way, to the best of my knowledge, has yet to say anything remotely funny? Look, I still like Joe. I still consider him a friend of mine, despite his lampooning of me, even when I'm not there to defend myself. Quite a cowardly move. I would have thought in his own lingo that's considered to be what's called a low blow. But of course, Alex, you know, I'm fairly sure he'd have had a few things to say if I'd have dared to lecture him on his world of expertise. And as far as Dave Smith is concerned, although I'm sure his wealth and breadth of knowledge on geopolitics is Churchillian, I really think that the only advice I would ever seek from him is how to not be funny. Oh, Douglas, I love you, son. Oh, I know you very well, and that was I'm always going to be on your side. But I want to know who else is on your side. So let's bring in now another former colleague of mine, Mr. Piers Morgan. Now, Piers, we know Douglas has appeared a few times on Uncensored. He's even stood in for you a few times. Piers, would you have Douglas back to stand in for you again?
Oh, no. No, why would I do that? By the way, hang on. I never gave you permission to ask the question. But why would I do that? Ask me why. Why wouldn't I let him?
Why wouldn't you let him, Piers?
Well, I'll tell you why. All right, thanks for asking. We can agree on that. Because he thinks that by going around visiting all these military battlefields, he thinks that gives him more military experience than it gives me, than I've got. And I won't be lectured to by someone who has nowhere near as much military experience as I do.
Now, Piers, you're a man who's brilliant.
Well, hang on, I haven't finished yet.
Sorry.
Ask me what my experience is.
Well, what is your experience, Piers?
My brother was a colonel in the armed forces. Now you can continue.
Why, thank you. I mean, look, Piers, you have rubbed shoulders with so many famous people over the years.
That's right.
Yes, yes, you have. I remember walking to the studios in Ealing. We saw a lot of photos of it. If you could have had dinner with one person in history, who would you pick?
Well, that's obvious. It'd be Cristiano Ronaldo. Who else? He's got beautiful glutes, beautiful abs. He epitomises the definition of a real man. And by the way, for what it's worth, I've already had dinner with him. I've got him on speed dial. What do you think of that? Well, hang on, don't speak. I haven't finished. I'd also like to have dinner with Meghan Markle. I'd like to have dinner with Harry and Meghan in my mansion in Beverly Hills. I've got a mansion in Beverly Hills. And ask them why they're so obsessed with me. Hang on. Continue.
Thank you, Piers. Anyway, go and make yourself a nice cup of tea and get back to phoning some of your slebby mates. That's interesting because Piers Morgan, who we've just been speaking to, had an infamous clash with this other broadcaster, James O'Brien. James, you've been covering a lot of the developments closely when it comes to this nascent peace process between Ukraine and Russia being brokered by President Trump. How do you think that's going?
Well, first of all, I'm utterly amazed that you've asked me a question like that, referring as you do to Donald Trump as President Trump. That is, of course, to make the assumption and presumption that he's even a human being. He's not a human being, Alex. You know that. We all know that. He's a piece of orange slithering filth who salivates over another piece of dictatorial filth. And the fact that you've even asked me the question just shows how discombobulated you are. It constitutes incontrovertible evidence that you don't know a sausage, you don't know a scintilla, you haven't got a clue about him. And that's not my opinion, Alex. That's just counting. You know, you really would have done well to just not ask that question, just remain silent. Always remain. That's a flipping aphorism of mine that the entire dumb nation of the United Kingdom could have learned, but hey-ho.
James, you once gave
It is
Tony
9 minutes after 9. Continue. I had to interrupt you for that.
So it's all right. When it comes to these misogynistic males on the left, I'm well used to it. Don't get me started on Alistair Campbell. You were talking about Alistair Campbell. You once gave Tony a shout-out on your show. Are you still a fan?
Oh, it's a difficult one, to be honest with you. I am still a fan. He was the first person I'd ever seen to do an impression of me, so I genuinely thought was absolutely brilliant. I remember saying that it was Mike Yarwood level for those of us who are old enough to flipping remember Mike Yarwood. But I think that as long as it's playful and as long as it's not too cutting and fair game, when no one is safe from the Parthian shot of an impressionist, I think it's acceptable in the form of unadulterated flattery. I kind of like him to call in on Mystery Hour and teach me how to do an impression of myself, and maybe I can teach him how to never be wrong. Thomas Watts is here with your headlines.
James, thank you ever so much. I'm amazed you accepted the invitation to come on my show. But even more amazed was when Samara gave me the call that we've actually got the Prime Minister on in this hour. Prime Minister, some people think you're a bit too much of a fan of, listen, let me ask you something. What do you think of James O'Brien?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. It's a pleasure. I am a feminist, and I love everybody, and I want this country to be united. So thank you so much for having me on, Alex. It's a great pleasure and a privilege. And this is a government of service, which is completely irrelevant to what I'm saying. James O'Brien is a wonderful individual. I think he's one of the few voices, possibly the sole voice left in the country that is actually pro-me. But I think he's doing a fantastic job, and I have a conversation with him before and after every single hour that he does, or 2 hours that he does, and I know that he's going to continue to serve this country. So thank you so much for that.
I've got to ask you, Prime Minister, because you were once, of course, in the government of Jeremy Corbyn. You served as his Brexit secretary. You then sort of turfed him out of the party unceremoniously, and all of his acolytes. And he's gone on to form a new political party. Are you worried?
Well, look, Jeremy will do what Jeremy wants to do at the end of the day. I think he's a fantastic person. Jeremy loves the NHS. I love the NHS. I worked at the NHS. My mother was actually, she worked at the NHS. And so I think that Jeremy will do a fine job of whatever it is that he goes on to do. I think that it was a silly thing for him to do, to be fair. I think he was a silly hostage. Sorry, I can't get it right. I think he's a silly sausage for not staying loyal to me, but it is what it is, and I wish him luck.
Well, listen, you'll be pleased to know, Sir Keir, that we've actually got your former boss, Jeremy Corbyn, on the show to give us an update about how your party might be progressing. Magic Grandpa, welcome aboard. How are things going with Zara Sultana?
Well, I want to speak about the party, your party. I don't yet have a clue, or a Scooby-Doo, as they say in street lingo. I don't have a clue what it represents, but I do know. First of all, I don't appreciate the premise of the question. I'm thinking of actually launching an investigation into that, and into you possibly violating my human rights, at the very least, my sensitivities. I think it was really a mean question. So can I finish, please, what I was saying? I think it was a really mean question for you to actually ask. But if you want a little update about your party, this is the party that will take wealth and divide it up and make an absolutely economic disaster of the country and plummet us into a worse condition than it already is, if that were even possible. Can I finish, please? Thank you.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you, Jeremy. At least you're going to survive the apocalypse with your marrows in your allotment. Now, someone else who probably is anticipating apocalypse, or at least a dystopian future, because he's not particularly pleased with the Labour Party nor the Conservative Party, is the one and only Peter Hitchens. Peter, is it fair to say that you're not really optimistic about Britain's future?
No. What is there to be optimistic about? As you tell me, the country's finished. It's not only finished, it's finished decades ago. There's nothing to be positive about. There's nothing to be optimistic about. And I don't understand. I don't understand why you're even asking that. I spent my entire life trying to explain the abolition of Britain is happening in real time. It's happening before our very eyes, and nobody wants to listen. Nobody's doing a thing about it. I mean, why do you even ask the question?
I think a lot of people are concerned about Britain's future, but I mean...
No, they're only pretend to be concerned. If they were concerned, they'd actually do a thing about it. I mean, what do you want me to do? Sit here and recite what I've been saying for the last 10 years in the space of an hour? I should walk out on you. This is a testament to my powers of self-restraint that I haven't actually sworn at you.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're still here. Let me ask you a different question then. If there was an election tomorrow, who would you vote for?
I wouldn't vote. I'd say don't vote. If you're going to vote, I'd say vote against the thing that you don't want. Don't vote for the thing that you think that you want, because you won't get it. They'll make you a futile promises which will never be realised or never be implemented, and you'll set yourself up for the same kind of disappointment as I set myself up for all those years ago when I was a trot.
That doesn't really seem like what you want me to do about it approach, but I dare not ask you about drugs.
There's nothing to be done. There is nothing to be done.
I dare not ask you about drugs, Mr. Hitchens. You have strong opinions on those, don't you?
You're obsessed with drugs. I've said it once. I'll say it. I will say it once more. You mention drugs again, I'll walk out. I don't wish to talk about drugs. You've read nothing of what I've said, and you've heard nothing of what I've said. And if you've read anything, you've obviously been doing so with the lights off. You know nothing about drugs, and you understand even less.
But I remember, actually, thank you, Mr. Hitchens, but I remember you having a big disagreement about drugs with Russell Brand. Let's bring in Russell Brand, why don't we? Russell, have you forgiven Peter?
Well, it's too bad that I forgot to bring my wig, but we'll have to continue anyway. Listen, Peter is an interesting fella, isn't he? I like Peter. He's like a walking, talking, robotic personification of liberality, a perfect harmony of a cacophony that is linguistically synchronised within our cosmos, that has emancipated us, that has lacerated us, that has, of course, legislated our very dogma by which our very physicality governs our codification as Homo sapiens. So I don't hate Peter. We are both Christians. We are both with the propensity for divine forgiveness. So all I can say to Peter is, for God's sake, in the name of humanity, stay free.
Stay free. Well, thank you ever so much, Russell Brand, who's now gracing us in Britain after spending a significant amount of time over in the United States, where the free world is, of course, led by Mr. Donald J. Trump. And you wouldn't believe it, would you? Samara, the best booker in all of history, picked up the blow to the White House.
She's fantastic.
She is fantastic, isn't she?
She's fantastic.
Yeah, have you seen her, Donald? She's quite a good looker as well.
No, I haven't, but I'm sure that she is. I like beautiful women, that I can tell you. But she was fantastic to deal with, and yeah, she should come and work for me, to be fair. She's probably straight out of Central Casting. What were you going to ask me? I interrupted you. I shouldn't interrupt women. The fake news, they'll say, Donald Trump interrupts. No, I don't interrupt women. I love women. Carry on.
Well, thank you, President. I just want to know your thoughts on Zelensky and Putin and trying to broker a historic deal between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah. I get along with Putin. I don't like what he's doing at the moment. I'm not so happy about it. I give him a call, and then the next thing I hear missiles going out fired by drones. They call them drones, right? We call them drones. But I got to talk to him. You see, this is a war that should never have happened, would never have happened. This was Biden's war. You know that. You know that better than anybody, Alex. You're a smart woman. Even though you are a woman, you are smart. And as far as Zelensky is concerned, he's not completely innocent. We know that. But I get along with him, and I'm going to get along with Putin. By the way, what I think that we need to do is, I said it. I don't know if people agree with me. A lot of people do agree with me. We need to get them to have a game of golf. Right, Alex?
I think a lot of disputes could be resolved, especially at the 19th hole. On that, would you be thinking of inviting Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan over a game of golf? What do you make of the leadership of the United Kingdom?
Well, I did say that when I met him, I actually liked Keir Starmer. I thought he wasn't a bad guy. I thought he was a little too nice, right? Some say a little too nice. We got on. He was a tough negotiator, that I can tell you. Well, he told me to say that, actually. I said it. Did you see the way that he kept trying to get a word in? It was so pathetic. It was sad. I feel sorry. I don't even know how you voted for him. But Great Britain, they call it once Great Britain. We'll see what happens. And who was the other person you asked about?
Oh, Sadiq Khan. He's our mayor of London.
Well, he's a nasty, terrible guy. No, I can't stand him. No, not at all. I think he's probably the worst thing that's happened since Keir Starmer, to be fair. You know, a lot of people, they're going to say that they can extrapolate my political views from these impressions, but they don't have a clue. But he was terrible. Yeah, he's terrible. I don't want to speak to him. You know, they call them no-go zones. A lot of people say that where Sadiq Khan lives, you're not allowed to go there. You're not allowed. Think of it. You're not allowed to go where Sadiq Khan lives. Isn't that terrible? But he was very uninviting to me when I won the first election. That was before the other election was stolen. But no, he's a terrible guy, and I don't want to say certain things on here because I don't want to get you in trouble. Okay?
I do appreciate that, President. You must be incredibly busy, so I'll let you go back to trying to save the world. But I'm pleased to say that we have your deputy standing in for you. We're joined now by the one who's considered a hawk when it comes to matters defence, Marco Rubio. Now, Marco, thank you for coming on the programme. The President said that he could get the war wrapped up in 24 hours. How do you think that's going?
Well, I don't think the President of the United States is the first president to promise things during an election that hasn't managed to deliver. But I think that the President's policy is perfectly clear. President Trump is America first. That means he's going to do whatever he can to stop wars and not start forever wars. Look, this was a war that was started on President Biden's watch. Everybody knows that. Now, if we have to negotiate a little longer, we'll do that. If we have to put secondary sanctions on Putin, that's what we'll do. We might have to do that. We don't want to do that, but we might have to. But I'll tell you what we won't do. We won't be getting involved in wars. That's not America last. That's America first. And that's a policy that's not going to change.
It's good to know. Thank you ever so much, Marco. Now, somebody who caused a bit of controversy when he went over to Russia and interviewed Vladimir Putin and seems to have a bit of a soft spot for him is Donald Trump's old friend, Tucker Carlson, once of Fox News. Tucker, I've always wanted to have a conversation with you. What do you make of the president of Russia?
I think I resent that question. I don't like that you asked that. I think it's a horrible question. I think it's nasty. I think it's loaded, actually. I mean, what do you even... What does that even mean? What do I think of it? What do you think I'm pro-Russia? So suddenly because I just don't support Zelensky, I don't support giving billions of dollars to Ukraine. Doesn't mean I like Putin, I think. I don't know. I could be wrong. But what do you even mean by that? I don't think I'm Christian, I'm American, and I'm allowed to ask questions. So if I want to ask if Putin is actually a good guy, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking that. I'm not saying that he is. I'm not saying that at all. Not like at all, obviously.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Carlson.
I think I've been perfectly clear. Everything I said was perfectly clear and always is.
Oh, without a doubt, you're very, very clear on all of your positions. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence via the internet at Humble Talk Towers. Now, somebody else who is a big name from the other side of the pond joins us now. It is Mr. Lex Friedman. Lex, many say that the last election was the podcast election. And one of the podcasts that was done with Tucker Carlson was Lex Friedman. Lex, do you see a bright future ahead of us?
I always try to look at the cup half full and not half empty. I think that we have a lot to be optimistic about. I don't want to look at a world where I think that we're going to get into never-ending wars that just never end and they're perpetual. I believe in peace, and I believe in aliens coming down to solve that peace, or maybe AI, or maybe Elon Musk. And I really believe that if we put our minds to it, the human brain can achieve anything, including bringing about unlikely peace and bringing about aliens.
Wow. I mean, look, I'm a big fan of the alien stuff myself. I find myself going down the sort of ufology wormhole from time to time. Just incredible. What a run of guests, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe the booking power that our very own Samara has here at Talk. But actually, of course, if you're listening on the radio, you probably did think that those were all guests from this side of the pond and the other. Those watching will know that it wasn't. Or you might be already amazed that we would be able to get such a marathon run. it was, in fact, the brilliant, astonishing skills. I mean, I found myself, Tony Lapidus, ladies and gentlemen, I found myself listening to that as if I was actually speaking to Donald Trump, as if I was actually speaking to Piers Morgan. I actually found myself triggered and affronted by the character of James O'Brien.
I hope I didn't say anything that will get me in trouble or you in trouble. Some of them are controversial, so I just tried to rein it in. But
you played your parts much better than me. I was rubbish at stringing all of this together, but you were a consummate pro. How on earth do you master those voices?
Well, some of them come a bit more naturally. You can kind of tell which ones you will be able to impersonate or which ones you already can. And some of them, you start off not being able to do them at all, and you really just have to get to know them. Look, I'm a bit addicted to watching all sorts of things, whether it's boxing. I started off doing boxing impressions mainly, and now more recently it's been politics. I've always watched politics, but I never really wanted to get into it. Yeah. Because I don't know. I thought maybe it would just lead to kind of a bit too much negativity and whatever. I don't say that as kind of freedom and kumbaya person. I just mean I couldn't really be bothered with the stick that can sometimes come with it, and I just liked boxing. So I started doing them, just watching them. But the truth is, I've done impressions, as any impressionist will tell you. I've done them since I was about this big.
Did you just find you had this natural affinity for it, or did you sort of sit there practicing? But did you want to be an impressionist and practice, or could you just, for whatever reason, just soak up like a sponge these voices and do them?
Yeah, I could always do them. Obviously, before my voice broke when I was a tiny kid, I thought they were good and they weren't. Like, I remember my first impression. I couldn't do it now, but it was I think it was Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. For some reason, I just used to quote him. Then I would do I can't remember the guy from Titanic, the villain in Titanic, Billy Zane, but I can't remember his name. But it was mainly, you grew up doing teachers and mocking and being a bit of a class clown and doing them in the playground and doing them during register and whatever. You get in a bit of trouble for them, but they always kind of made people laugh. And it was only later in life when I just started thinking randomly, well, you can either do this for friends or I can just give it a go. People had told me to just give it a go and see how they go. So I started doing people like Tyson Fury, who I don't know whether your listeners listen to Tyson Fury or they watch him in boxing, but I was a big fan of boxing. And Tyson Fury was one of the first people that I ever did publicly. So I love Tyson Fury for that, because he gave me a lot of material. Get up. And then I went on to doing a whole load of other boxers, and it just went on from there, really. And I watched things like The Sopranos and Peaky Blinders, and I could somehow master a lot of accents, but only by being exposed to them, only by watching them enough. That was a long answer.
What's so interesting about you is some of the voices that you cover are not people that your average impressionist. I've never heard a Peter Hitchens impression before, and it's just absolutely bang on. It's amazing.
Yeah, I credit a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, for that, because we watched Christopher and Peter for years. And he told me basically just, why don't you do it? And I thought, well, I don't know if there's really an audience for it. He doesn't like me, it seems, but I don't think he likes me very much.
Oh, he's a misanthropist in general, Pete. Yes, I'm not sure who he does like.
Yeah, the comedy is not funny. Tony Lapidus is not funny at all. But
so he actually suggested that I do it, and then we were just sitting there. I did a story, and it went, and people really, really liked it. And so I thought, okay, I'll give this a go, and I just. But I've been watching him for years. But then there are people who are unlikely accents, such as like Tony Soprano, the New York accent, the New Jersey accent rather. You wouldn't expect that to come out of a guy who's kind of born and raised in Leeds, which is I don't know if you've ever seen The Sopranos, but if you haven't, you probably should. By the way, there's a lot of things that I'm not going to say right now. Like I said, I don't want to get you in any trouble.
I don't know how you do it. I do not know how you do it. Are there people you're sort of working on at the moment that you're like, I'd really like to master that person?
Yes, there are. There are three in particular. This is one of the things that whenever you put up a new impression, just by the way, Ali, so you should know that you always get critiqued and you always get people. Some of it's really well intentioned. But so one of them that I want to do is, for example, Zelensky, because by the way, I'm told I look like him, so I think I'm obliged to do it. Zelensky's got a kind of mixed accent.
You actually do, yeah.
That's I don't see it, but people tell me that I do, so I felt I had no choice. So he has he tries to inject a bit of English into his accent. So and I've never heard anyone in any language speak with his voice. So he's like a bit like this.
Yeah. So what we want to do, Mr. President, with your leadership. Yeah. So what we will do to Putin, we will not allow Ukraine to go defeated, and with you, Mr. President, we will come to peace and ceasefire. Yeah.
He does these weird things, these weird noises. I don't quite know what it is, but I'm working on it anyway. Another one is Konstantin Kissin. He gave me a bit of from Trigonometry.
Yeah.
Great, really a great podcast. I really like both of them. Him and Francis Foster. Francis will also be making an appearance in my next one that I do of them. But the one of Konstantin.
So he is a little bit nasal. We know that he's nasal, and we know that he's got his own accent. So that he actually said to me when I did an impression of him in the interview that he did recently, and one of the things that he said. Was that why am I American? He said that about my impression. I said I don't want to get into the weeds of this, but you do have your own twang. You don't say own. You like a London. You don't say own. You say own. You say don't. You say long, and that's just how he speaks. And I think some people get it and some people don't.
It's brilliant. It's like I said, it's just amazing that you're doing all these brilliant impressions of people who really are these sort of social media influencers. The one person that everyone seems to struggle with, though, because I used to know very well the impersonator Matt Ford, and no one can seem to do a Nigel Farage.
I find it very difficult. I know little buzzwords that he says. Like I said, well, hang on, we've got to be very careful because we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. All right. So he'll say things, but I don't know if I can get the bass really. But speaking of bass, someone that I'm really trying to do is I put my first one up. It was like a draft one. Was Christopher Hitchens. Now again, people have said, well, you sound a bit like you're doing Peter. They were brothers. They do sound similar. So if I were to explain an impression in in Christopher Hitchens' voice, I'd say, well, to do an impression of Christopher Hitchens that even slightly resembles him. You have to be able to find the right gift of phrase if you can. But to make a promise that you will master his powers of linguistic genius and the rich baritone bass with which he so soothingly spoke, you give hostage to fortune in doing so. However, Alex, I will say I've dubbed this a personal project of mine, and I quote, resurrecting Christopher. Of course, the irony of that will not have got lost on you, I don't think. I don't say that sardonically. I don't say that with sarcasm, I should say, at all. But to do an accurate impression that is not 100%, it's not 100% about the voice. You do know that, Alex, don't you? It's about body language. It's about facial expressions. It's about tone. It's about cadence. Do you know who taught me that? My friend Salman Rushdie. By the way, when are we going to mention my social media handles available on all fine social media platforms everywhere?
Oh, now you can do that, yeah.
When are we going to do that?
Oh, well, let's just get it done now, shall we?
I feel like too much time has elapsed since we last mentioned my name. We can do that. So,
this is just amazing. The people you could bring back from the dead as well. I mean, it's just such a delight. I think that next time I want to book a holiday, you're going to have to brush up on your Alex Phillips, and then I can sneak off.
I'll give it a go. Unfortunately, women are much harder to do, but for me, there's only like one or two that I can do. But yes, I will give it a go, I promise. I hope you enjoyed the Christopher one. You can give your thoughts on that, by the way. Have I got potential? Is it on its way?
All I can say is you've nailed every single one of them. And actually, I can't do it myself, but you're Nigel. That's sort of like, all right, I can't. Yeah, it was so good. It was the closest I've heard anyone. I don't know why he's so hard to impersonate, because he's got such a distinct voice. You'd think it would just be one of the easiest.
And the face. The only thing I can say really of him is what I said. Well, hang on, we've got to be very careful what we do. We've only just joined the party. That's what I hear in my head when I think of him.
It's brilliant. Tony, you're brilliant. I could talk to you for the rest of the show. I could just let you come sit in this seat and be every single talk presenter, probably. Oh, my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, what an amazing talent. What an amazing talent. That is Tony Lapidus. He is a brilliant up-and-coming comedian and impressionist. I think he's the best. The minute I saw this guy online, I was like, I've got to get him on the programme. Next time we'll have him sitting in here so we can all sort of, we can have a good old blimmin' laugh about it. That was just amazing. I cannot believe it. That was superb. Shall we all take a break now? Because that was a heck of a marathon of voices, wasn't it? We're going to take a little short break, and after that, why don't we hear from you and your voice? Can you do impressions? I'd be willing for you to give it a go live on air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call if you want to do an impression. Try it yourself, or just talk about some of the topics that we've covered tonight. And believe you me, we have covered a lot, haven't we? 0344 499 1000, normal network rate and all that. You can send me a WhatsApp on that or a voice note on that. 8722 is the number if you'd like. Rather text me though. And if you're going to do that, write the word talk before you text. And look both ways before you cross the road. And come back after this advert break.
In Q1 of 2025, there was 451,000 properties up for listing, of which 70,000 of those were ex-rentals. So if they're ex-rentals, it means those landlords wanted to sell them.
Yep.
And if they wanted to sell them, they wanted to sell them with vacant possession because they would get more money. And that means tenants are being asked to leave, whether it goes to court in a broken system or whether they leave voluntarily. It's a worry, you know, because landlords are needed in this industry because people need to sleep somewhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. I still can't get over Tony Lapidus. It's amazing. We ran him so long, I've got to try and do 55 million advert breaks now between here and 10 p.m. But before we do that and expose ourselves to the long tentacles of commercialism, let's speak to Joe, who is in Wiltshire. Good evening, Joe. Hi, Joe.
Good evening, Alex.
Hi, love. How are you?
Good to speak to you. I'm okay. I'm good. I want to go back to your comment about where are all the feminists?
Yeah.
Well, we are here, but we've got other battles to battle. if you know what I mean. We're on the job. We're doing our stuff. I mean, when I'm with my daughter, my daughter-in-law, and my son, he just doesn't say a word because he can't get a word in edgeways. There's not a chance, and he just doesn't argue with anybody. But the one thing I want to say to you is, do you know about the battle of personal protective equipment? Do you know the battle of crash test dummies?
Oh, you mean the fact that, yes, I actually do. The fact that crash test dummies were modelled on men. And so basically, if you're a woman in a standard car, the seatbelt's more likely to garrote you because the person, the little mannequin they put in the front seat wasn't built to your proportions. Look, any woman who's ever got on an aircraft knows that the sort of, you know, the pressure on the lumbar part of your spine is intense because, you know, it's not that. Even right now, right, I'm sitting on a chair in this studio and my little feet are dangling like a toddler in a high chair. I can't even put my feet on the ground. And if I were to do that and lower the chair so I could, I'd be like this at the desk. You just have little eyes poking out. Because even air conditioning, that's sexist, isn't it? You come into this studio and the men all wear... So I used to wear dresses to work, and I don't anymore because it's always minus 10 degrees in this studio with the air conditioning set for men in suits.
Yep. Well, that's the thing. So you've got the guys there in their shirts, and all the ladies look like bag ladies in their work fleeces because it's that darn cold.
Yeah.
We're totally different. We're built differently. Our musculature is different. Our skin thickness is different. Everything is different physiologically. I have been a health and safety person for 30 plus years. I would love to retire, trust me, I would love to retire. Anyway, and I've had to battle all that time to get decent fitting protective equipment.
Don't even get me started, right? Don't get me started on broadcast earpieces. Because I've got a tiny little ear hole. So if you often see me trying to like jam this piece of equipment so I can hear what Samara's saying deeper into my ear canal, because it's just not made for nothing's made for female ears. My ear, when it's got one of these little earpieces in, seems to think it's a Thai lady boy doing a ping pong show. Spits them out all
after 30 years. It is indeed, but I wanted to refresh my PPE. It was looking a bit dowdy and not very professional, and so I asked for some more, and I was given this generic form. And I looked at this generic form, and it just said, "Do you want one of this and one of that, and what's the size and that sort of thing?" And I got in touch with the administrator, and I said, "So it's your choice what I have then, based on how I do this checklist." And he said, "Well, yeah, we'll just get the cheapest and ship it over to you." No, do you have a catalogue? So he eventually sent me a catalogue, and I've now picked out female items in that catalogue. And it's like,
Joe, well done you. I mean, yeah, all women listening are probably shouting at the radio right now going, and this example and that example and da-da-da-da-da. It's a man's world out there still. But don't you worry, as long as women stick up for other women, that is the most important thing we've got to remember. And you know, it's a dirty word, feminist, isn't it? It's a shame it's become a dirty word. So I tend not to use it for that reason. But I will always stand up for the sisterhood. The battle is still not won. Okay, battle's still not won against advert breaks either. I have to let you know that. So we're going to have to take one right now, but don't go anywhere because I am coming back.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Alrighty, welcome back. Let's read some messages first, shall we? Becca in Norfolk makes a very good point. The main threat to women is other women, sexual liberty and my body, my choice. It's the biggest lie ever. Women can be evil on social media. They love to judge one another. Unfortunately, Andrew Tate does have a point when it comes to Bonnie Blue and Katie Price. Porn isn't necessarily the problem, but women using their bodies as a free-for-all is. Now, that might sound like an old-fashioned point of view, but I agree with that, because there's a sort of sacred covenant that's existed since time immemorial, which is that if a man wants to have access to the temptations and the offerings of a woman, he's got to traverse certain hurdles. He's got to offer certain things in return. It's sort of been the sacred contract that was anchored really in marriage. And then when you had women who would do whatever with anybody at any given time, once upon a time it was sort of considered, well, you don't want to go hang out with her, do you? She's a bit of the older. But now we've had it forced onto us as women that sexual liberty is of a great benefit to us, that actually being like a man is a wonderful thing and it's what we deserve. But the problem is, what we have seen is very few marriages, very few people having children. Quite frankly, if a man goes on Tinder and meets you and then you don't sort of, whatever, you can just speak to that person or that person or that. But it's sort of broken the holy, millennia-long sacred covenant that sort of held all of society together. And I say about people like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips, especially Bonnie Blue, because when she talks, there's something quite convincing about her. I make all this millions of money, I know what I'm doing, my family helps me. There are so many young, impressionable girls who will think that's a very quick and easy way to make millions of pounds, I'm going to do that. And then Bonnie Blue will say, oh yeah, no, at some point in the future I want to get married and have kids. But also the other thing is, unfortunately, it sets in motion a perception of women in the West, and particularly, I have to say, blonde-haired women, that we fit a certain stereotype, that we all behave like that, or that is normal. But also, when you see these queues of men waiting to go and see these particular women, and you see men with wedding rings on and things like that. Again, where is the covenant between the sisterhood about looking after your fellow women? Anyway. So, Becca, basically, what I want to say is I actually agree with much of what you say. Now, Pete says, my family came over in 1066 from France. They had a castle built, and we're all dark-haired. You do realise this is about 1,000-odd years ago. But my point is this. There are, of course, dark-haired people in Scandinavia and ginger people and all the rest of it. But a lot of the Norse peoples, this is kind of a very regional thing from that neck of the woods, right? This whole stuff, the blonde-haired thingamajig. But I think we can all agree that the Norse men and women probably didn't look like they came from sub-Saharan Africa. I think that, at least, is something that we can agree on, dark-haired Pete. OK, let's speak now to Craig, who is in Yorkshire. Hi there, Craig.
Hey, thanks for calling me back, Alex. I was just about to go to bed because, like many of your talk radio listeners,
they can't go to bed. Petrie's on next. Is it Petrie on next, actually? Is it? It's Andre and Ash on next. I didn't think it was Petrie, actually. You can't go to bed yet, can you?
It's a real shame I shouldn't, but I've got to wake up early in the morning to go to work to pay taxes and all of that.
Yeah, me too. I'm doing 10 till 1 in the morning tomorrow, so I've got to skedaddle off home, whack on me eye mask, try and get some shots. I come back and do it all again.
Well, okay, so at the top of your show, you were talking with your presenter helper. I can't remember the name of the...
Oh, Philip Kitterley.
Yes, and you were talking about how we should have the concept of refugee camps for these folk that are coming across, invading our nation on a daily basis. And I got the impression that, the UK's kind of forgotten how to build these. But let me remind you that, well, some backstory from myself. In 1991, I went to live in Hong Kong, and in the lead up to 1997, before Hong Kong was returned to China, the Hong Kong government, which was effectively an extension of the UK government at the time, were quite happily running refugee camps for Vietnamese boat people. There were camps literally everywhere. I think by the time I got to Hong Kong, there was 5 or 6 still, but in the heyday, I think there was 20+ camps filled with, Vietnamese boat people that were arriving illegally on small boats into the territory. Friends of mine used to go to these camps to read storybooks to children who were behind, barbed wire fences. So in very recent times, within recent living history of the United Kingdom, we were running these kinds of camps. We could do it again if we only had the will.
I agree. You know, when you look at where some of these refugees camps are around the world, places like Syria, let's say,
exactly.
They have far colder winters than we have and far hotter summers. We're actually a nation with a very clement climate. We don't have hurricanes and tornadoes and blizzards. We don't have mass heat waves as much as the BBC like to bang on about climate change. We don't have bitterly cold winters that sink down, 10 degrees lower than zero. If anywhere, all we have is a bit of drizzle from time to time, for crying out loud, and we even call that Storm Derek or something. But we should be able to set up very safe and secure encampments on disused military bases and say, this is where you all stay. And if that was the case, they wouldn't get on the boats anymore, because that's not what they're after. They don't want a tent. They want the hotel.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. It's a problem that would solve itself, because you say, here's the tents, this is what you're going to be sleeping in. That will soon get shared on their TikTok videos, and oh crikey, let's just stay in France and enjoy ourselves there and go maraudering or whatever. They won't be getting on the boats to come across. It's a problem that can easily solve itself. The problem is there's no political will.
And I don't understand in what treaty, in what bit of international law is this written? Because if they are good enough for just a mat on the floor in Greece, if they're good enough for some bin-bag bivouac in the sand dunes of Calais in France, if Germany is no longer putting these people in hotels, all these other co-signatories of the ECHR, then why on earth in this country are we spending millions and millions and millions and millions and millions, giving these people bricks and mortar, giving them breakfast buffets, giving them all these delightful little treats and privileges that even normal citizens don't have? It makes no sense to me, Craig. Craig, it was lovely speaking to you, my darling. Thank you ever so much. Tuck yourself up in your cottons, pour yourself a cup of cocoa, but do still stay tuned. And you as well, you also stay tuned, because we've got to squeeze in, yep, you got it, one more advert break, because I ran the first segment super long before I go off air. But when I come back, I'm going to read some more of your messages, maybe speak to someone else, and then welcome aboard HMS Fun, the brilliant Ash and Andre. So don't go anywhere, there's so much coming up.
In Q1 for 2025, there was 451,000 properties up for listing, of which 70,000 of those were ex-rentals. So if they're ex-rentals, it means those landlords wanted to sell them.
Yep.
And if they wanted to sell them, they wanted to sell them with vacant possession because they would get more money. And that means tenants are being asked to leave, whether it goes to court in a broken system or whether they leave voluntarily. It's a worry, you know, because landlords are needed in this industry because people need to sleep somewhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Let's quickly speak now to John in Shropshire. Something very disruptive has entered the studio. By the way, I'm getting distracted out the corner of my eyes. If you hear hustling and bustling, the sound of a miniature fan, squeaking chairs, a sort of slightly sort of brummy chuckle, it's because Ash is just causing havoc in the corner there.
I'll just be quiet now.
Be good. Be good. Let's speak to John in Shropshire. Join in if you want. All right, John.
Good evening, Alex. Great to talk to you.
Hi, my darling. How are you? What do you want to talk about?
Fine. It's just an analogy, really. It's about all these commies goading Nigel about sort of he can't do this and he can't do that. Well, I believe he can with determination, and I sort of compare it to something I did myself back in 1994. I was a publican in the centre of Shrewsbury, a wonderful medieval town, and I had a pub there, and I actually brought in a smoking ban in the whole of the pub. It was the first one in the country at the time, and everybody said at the time, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you'll go bankrupt. And I was goaded, and I was sort of branded idiot and stupid. But, it worked. It worked really well in the end. It was very quiet to start with, but, things turned around and got it off the ground, and it was a smoking, well, it's still a smoking pub now like they all are, but it was the first one ever, I believe, in the country at the time, and believe me, in 1994, it was a very hard thing to do.
This is the mad thing about Britain today, isn't it, Ash? Because, like, there's such a, we can't do it. International law says no. Oh, it's going to be too difficult. Oh, it's going to be too controversial. Oh, well, the lawyers are just going to overturn it. How on earth, once upon a time, when we were like this, tiny little island nation, did we run 1/3 of the world? We got on boats and
we were stifled at every moment, weren't we? I mean, they don't like us now, the authorities. It's the state versus the nation, isn't it? So they just clamp down on us and now they want to put people above our own citizens, in this court case coming up in Epping.
But this is the mad thing about Britain, right? When you think about Brits, like, we didn't have to go into that First World War, did we? We could have just said,
we shouldn't have, should we? It's just because we were too honourable for our own good.
Yeah, Second World War, we can make, never mind about that.
Well, I mean,
we'll just look after ourselves
I've got to think
on
a bit differently there, haven't I? But I know what you mean. What would have happened?
Well, fair enough. But I mean, the thing is, Britain has always been this plucky nation on the front foot. We're going to go in there first to Ukraine,
like Trump is now.
Yeah.
Basically, we'll do what he now gives a year in prison. Anyone burns a flag, if you damage a statue, it's 10 years in prison. And he says now no one's burning flags or damaging statues. It's very simple.
Yeah, where did that